Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. One Piece. While Nami is still young, invite her on my boat at the beginning. Chapter 21. The ship of the Ningchuan trio set sail again. Only this time, their identities are no longer fugitives, but a pirate hunter with a mission. At this time, after successfully mastering the high-level armed color and knowledge color hockey, Ning Chuan's cultivation level has reached the point where he can easily crush a marine at the level of lieutenant general. Even General Ning Chuan is confident that he can fight them to a draw. Of course, except for the pervert Garp. However, if it really comes to fighting a strong man of that level, Ning Chuan firmly believed that there was a system that could infinitely calculate cultivation levels. Even a strong man of this level cannot be his opponent. His strength skyrocketed. At this time, he had already made plans to catch a few big pirates on the Grand Line. But he is not in a hurry to rush to the Grand Route now. The time agreed between myself and Garp lasted for 1 year. Within this year's time, with his current strength, it would be easy to catch 3 billion pirates. Therefore, the boat of the Ningchuan trio was not sailing very fast on the sea. It's almost an exaggeration to say that this is a sightseeing boat. Ah, so boring. How about we go fishing? Nami was slapped with a turtle face during a fight with a landlord. Throwing the cards in his hand, he lay down on the table and complained. You're bored because you keep losing. If you were as good as me and could win every fight, it wouldn't be boring anymore. Ning Chuan, who relied on his knowledge and domineering attitude to peek at the cards, had a clean face, not even a turtle on his face. He looked at Nami, who was a little dissatisfied, and complained, and said with a bad smile. Ning Chuan, tell me honestly, did you cheat? Nuo Chigao, whose face was also covered with little turtles, looked at Ning Chuan's clean face. He asked with a suspicious look on his face. Nijigao, you can't slander people. I swear to God, there is absolutely no such thing as stealing cards and hiding cards. If so, I will be punished by not being able to catch any fish this week. Ning Chuan pointed to the sky with a serious face and swore. Looking at Ning Chuan's formal look, Nami and Nokigao also slowly let go of their doubts. But then I thought about it. Ning Chuan seems to be an Air Force guy every day. After 2 days of sailing at sea, I couldn't catch a single fish. Ah, no, you couldn't catch fish in the first place. You definitely cheated. No, I'm so angry. I'm going to draw a turtle on your face. When she remembered that Ning Chuan was an Air Force guy, Nami immediately reacted. Pick up the paintbrush in your hand and start painting a turtle on Ning Chuan's face. Nami, let me hold him down. You go paint. After hearing Nami's analysis, Nokigao. He also realized that he had been deceived by Ning Chuan. So she pretended to be vicious, jumped directly on Ning Chuan, and started fooling around with him. However, Ning Chuan, who is knowledgeable and domineering, is in control. Naturally, they will not be caught easily. The two sisters spent a long time fussing over each other. I was so tired that I was dripping with sweat, but I couldn't catch this slippery guy Ning Chuan even once. Hateful. Don't hide if you can. Nami sat tiredly on the deck and spoke breathlessly. If you can catch me, I won't hide if you catch me. Hearing this, Nami, who was already very angry, became even more angry. Watch my sneak attack. Haha, I caught you. Nami, come on. While Ning Chuan and Nami were talking, Nuo Chigao jumped 3 feet high, jumped onto Ning Chuan, and hugged his neck. However, Ning Chuan at this time was not like before, slippery and slipped from her hands. Instead, he squinted his eyes and looked into the depths of the sea. There are 2 ships fighting ahead. Hearing Ning Chuan's words, Nokigao and Nami, who were holding his neck, couldn't help but curl their lips. A face full of disbelief. Humph. Don't even think about lying to us. That's right, this bad guy must have said this because he wanted to slip away again. Just when the two of them were about to continue painting turtles on Ning Chuan's face with a paintbrush, Ning Chuan once again easily broke away from Nuo Chigao's arm. In a flash, he jumped onto the bow of the ship and looked seriously into the distance. Nami, 2 o'clock east, full speed forward. I heard Ning Chuan's serious voice. Just now I thought he was looking for an excuse to avoid the 2 people being painted as turtles. I understood immediately. Ning Chuan didn't seem to be joking with them. But there are actually ships fighting on the sea ahead. Are we going to join in the fun? The two of them asked Ning Chuan while controlling the boat. Go. Why not go? If you encounter a pirate on the sea route, you can't help but catch him. After all, our mission is worth 3 billion. 10 minutes later, the boat of Ning Chuan and his 3 men had arrived at the place where the 2 ships were fighting. The 2 sides fighting at this time were all ships flying the pirate flag. I saw the pirate flags on these 2 ships. Ning Chuan immediately understood that this was a battle between pirates. However, among these 2 pirate ships, one ship aroused a lot of interest in Ning Chuan. The pirate flag on that ship was painted with a red-nosed skull. I saw that round red nose for a moment. Ning Chuan already knew who the owner of this ship was. One of the 4 emperors in the future. He has 2 super powerful 4 emperors, Hawkeye and Lao Sha. Buggy the Clown, my lord. I never expected that I would meet this guy so soon. Ning Chuan looked at Buggy, the clown standing on the bow of the ship, directing his men to fire. A smile couldn't help but appear on the corner of his mouth. Ning Chuan, do you know the guy with the red nose? But to be honest, his red nose is really ugly. Nami pointed at Buggy the Clown and said with a look of disgust. It's really ugly. I thought the captains on the pirate ships were all as handsome as Ning Chuan. Nokigao stared at Buggy the Clown for a while, then shook his head helplessly. At the same time, on board 2 ships at war, Buggy the Clown looked at the sudden arrival of the ship, and suddenly felt a bad feeling in his heart. It's broken. Is this Marine's ship? With my many years of sailing experience and awareness of danger, there are not many things that can make me feel uneasy. Buggy, the Clown, raised his head and glanced at the boat where Ning Chuan and the others were. It's just this one glance. He was immediately stunned on the spot. On this boat are 3 children. No way. How can a child with no hair even grow up, sail a boat and go to sea? While Buggy was dazed, Ning Chuan, who was standing at the bow of the boat, suddenly smiled and said, Hey, are you the future 4 emperors? Buggy God tier. Hearing Ning Chuan's voice, Buggy was stunned for a moment. Then, the corners of his mouth couldn't stop grinning to the base of his ears. 4 emperors, he said. I will be 4 emperors in the future. This guy has such a discerning eye. Just when Buggy was so happy at Ning Chuan's words, a cannonball landed directly at his feet while he was not paying attention. Boom! After a loud noise, Buggy's whole body was blown to pieces by this bomb. Nami and Nokigao on the boat were so frightened that they immediately covered their mouths and almost screamed. Ah, that red-nosed clown was so miserable, he was blown to pieces. It's really tragic, but something's not right. Why is there no blood on his body? Yeah, it feels so strange. Ning Chuan listened to the surprised voices of Nami and Nuo Chigao, smiled and explained to them. This guy is a devil fruit user. His ability is to tear his body into pieces. So the explosion just now couldn't hit him. After listening to Ning Chuan's explanation, Nami and Nuo Chigao finally reacted. So this is a devil fruit user. Before I saw them, I thought they were all scary. But Ning Chuan, this guy doesn't seem to be as powerful as you said. That's right, didn't you say that most people with devil fruit abilities are strong? Why is this guy so weak? Nami and Nokigao each said one sentence. He said this to Buggy, who was lying on the ground and had not recovered yet, looking embarrassed. After a while, Buggy, who had regained consciousness, put his body back together again. Jumped to the bow of the boat, pointed at Nami and Nuo Chigao and said angrily, You 2 brats, have you had enough? If you can't speak, just learn from this kid. When Buggy gets angry, all parts of his body fly out. Nami and Nuo Chigao were shocked. But soon, the 2 fell silent and disgusted while looking at the parts flying out of Buggy. His body is really going to fall apart. It's a bit magical, but the power of this fruit seems to be those useless fruits that Ning Chuan said are better not to be eaten. That's it. It doesn't look like it has any fighting ability at all. Buggy. The more Nami and Nuo Chigao talked, the darker Buggy's face became. Cough, cough, Nami, Nagio. As the saying goes, hit someone without slapping someone in the face, and curse someone without exposing their shortcomings. You have exposed Buggy's background. How will he behave in the future? After all, he is also a captain. Looking at Buggy, whose face was as dark as the bottom of a pot, Ning Chuan cooperated with Nami and Nuo Chigao mercilessly to attack. Buggy, who had endured it for a long time, finally couldn't bear it anymore at this moment. You three brats, if I don't give you a little show today, you really don't know how powerful my clown Buggy is. Don't cry and beg me for mercy later. As soon as he finished speaking, he instantly jumped onto the railing of the deck. He ignored the gunfire flying around him. Looking at the location of the three Ningchuan people, he directly used his ability to split the fruit. His hands suddenly left his body and attacked Nami and Nokigao, trying to catch them in one fell swoop. After all, according to his observation, the flexibility of the two little girls Nami and Nuo Chigao should be lower than that of Ning Chuan. If we catch them two first, Ning Chuan will definitely obey. However, Ning Chuan, who was standing on the boat opposite, seemed to have been prepared. He observed the movements of Buggy's hands with a calm expression. He stepped forward and took Nami and Nokigao's hands. Use your agility to shuttle between Buggy's split arms. Escaped every attack very gracefully. Ning Chuan's movements were as fast as the wind, and every dodge was just right. It gave Buggy the illusion that he was almost caught every time. How can this kid be so slippery? Even if I bring two people with me, I can easily dodge my attacks every time. At this moment, Buggy's face was twisted with anger. His attacks became more and more violent, but he still couldn't catch any of the three figures. And every time it's just a hair's breadth. For some reason, Buggy felt more and more like he was being tricked by these three little guys. Captain, brothers can't hold on any longer. Just when Ning Chuan was playing with Buggy, one of Buggy's men suddenly rushed over and shouted loudly. However, when he looked at his captain's livid face, and the three people on the other side of the ship who have been avoiding the palm of their captain, the pirate suddenly froze there, his heart filled with shock. It's just three children who are inseparable from the captain. This is a little too outrageous. The pirate was stunned. The scene before him was simply beyond his imagination. He couldn't think of it anyway. Faced with Captain Buggy's full attack, these three seemingly ordinary children were able to handle it with ease. You know, this is their Captain Buggy. He is a user with devil fruit abilities that only appears in legend. And judging from the captain's appearance, he has already used his abilities to the limit. But he couldn't even touch these three children. What the hell are these three children? Could it be the legendary ghost? Just when this pirate was stunned, the second pirate who came to report also saw this scene in front of him. He stood together with the pirate who came to report the news before, showing the same stunned expression. What the hell are you playing? If you can, just stand there and don't move. Buggy roared angrily, and his detached arms were waving wildly in the air, but they could only cut through the air in vain. They couldn't touch the Ningchuan trio at all. Hey, Red Nose. Your men will lose soon. Looking at Captain Buggy, who was extremely angry, Ning Chuan smiled and pointed in the direction of the enemy ship. How could Buggy, who was so angry, care about this? He roared angrily, and then shouted at the two pirates behind him. Push the cannon over to me. I'm going to blow them away with Buggy bombs. Hear the words of his own captain. The two men couldn't help but be shocked. Ship, Captain, do you really want to use Buggy bombs? Now there is only one Buggy bullet left, so why not use it on the frontal battlefield? After hearing what his men said, Buggy turned back angrily, his eyes filled with red bloodshot eyes. Don't you understand what I say? Go and push the cannon over to me. Those enemies are nothing to be afraid of. I'm going to blast away these three brats first. In Buggy's roar, the two men who came to report the news looked at each other helplessly. In the end, he had to follow Buggy's instructions and push the cannon that was supposed to be used on the front line. Buggy stood on the bow of the ship, stepping on the muzzle of the cannon with his foot, holding a red bomb about the same size as his red nose. Looking at the Ningchuan trio who had already stopped, they said angrily. Brat, now you three admit your mistake to me, Captain Buggy, and I can still let you go. Otherwise, I will blow the three of you and your ship into the sky. Face the threat of Buggy. Not only did Ning Chuan not flinch, but the smile on his lips became even wider. Ning Chuan naturally knows the power of Buggy bullets. A small Buggy can easily blow up an entire city block. In the theatrical version, the enhanced Buggy bombs can even cause considerable damage to the bullet in the fruit-awakened state. I know that buggy bullets are quite powerful, but Ning Chuan still seems to have great interest in this buggy bomb. He wants to test the power of buggy bullets. Oh, the legendary buggy bullet. I really want to try it. When Buggy heard this, he jumped 3 feet high in anger. At this time, he finally couldn't bear it anymore and roared angrily. Okay. You're such an ignorant boy, let me show you how powerful your Uncle Buggy is. Before he finished speaking, he no longer had any hesitation. He directly stuffed the buggy bullet in his hand into the barrel of the cannon. Then he personally took out a match and lit the cannon's fuse. The surrounding sea breeze, together with the waves, seemed to have stopped moving at this moment. The moment Buggy lit the fire, everyone on his pirate ship. All eyes were focused on this cannon that contained terrifying destructive power. Boom! After a loud noise, the buggy bomb pierced the air, heading straight for Ningchuan with an aura that could destroy everything. Well done! Ningchuan's eyes were as bright as a torch as he faced the deadly attack that was coming. He did not choose to escape, but stretched out a hand with great composure. Activate your own armed domineering power and instantly reach the extreme. A layer of dark black luster covered it, forming an indestructible shield on his hand. Come on, let me see how good your buggy is. Ning Chuan let out a low drink and watched Buggy flying towards him with a terrifying aura, standing motionless. He stretched out his domineering hand, which was full of armed force, and smacked the flying buggy bullets hard. At the moment when the buggy bomb crashed into Ningchuan's armed defense, the surrounding air seemed to be torn apart, and the huge explosion was deafening. The two ships were pushed back tens of meters by the terrifying power of the explosion. The waves all over the sky were stirred up by this collision. Under the terrifying explosion of the buggy bomb, it exploded into raindrops scattered all over the sky, covering the entire battlefield. The black smoke after the explosion hid Ning Chuan's figure inside. As the sea breeze blew, the black smoke gradually dispersed. Everyone was surprised to find that Ning Chuan was standing in the sky. Such a horrific explosion just happened, it would cause any harm to him whether alive or dead. What? Buggy's eyes widened in disbelief. He couldn't believe the buggy bullet that he was so proud of. It didn't cause any harm to Ning Chuan at all. On the contrary, that hateful boy was still looking at him with a wicked smile. I think your buggy bomb is really not very good. It can only be considered scratching at best, not even scraping. Ning Chuan slowly fell from the sky and landed on the bow of the buggy pirate ship. Looking down at all the pirates on the ship. At this time, the two pirates were fighting on the other side. They were all shocked by the huge noise when the buggy bomb exploded just now. They even forgot that they were fighting, and they all froze in place, looking at Ning Chuan standing on the bow of the buggy in a daze. I witnessed Ning Chuan, who was still fine and alive despite the terrifying power of buggy bombs. The other pirates on Buggy's ship were all horrified, their eyes filled with disbelief. Especially the members of the buggy pirates. They had seen the power of buggy bullets more than once. But the only thing I have never seen is that someone can survive the center of the buggy explosion. This guy is a monster. Buggy's second in command, Mochi, screamed in fright, his voice mixed with fear and awe. Captain Buggy's ultimate weapon was blocked by him like this. The other deputy captain, Kabaji, also opened his eyes in disbelief, as if he had seen something incredible. This is no longer something humans can do. This time, Captain, he seems to have messed with the wrong person. It's broken, it's broken. This guy can't even use buggy bullets, the captain's ultimate weapon. If he confronts us, will we still have a way to survive? How about we just surrender? Looking at Ning Chuan, who was still alive and kicking, and his own crew members whose morale was extremely low, Buggy knew that this time he might have offended someone he shouldn't have. It's all Shank's fault. If he hadn't scared me so much that I would have eaten this useless piece of fruit. I can't be as weak as I am now and be bullied by a child. Buggy got angrier as he thought about it. If Shanks dared to appear in front of him now, he would jump up and beat Shanks up. What to do? Do you want to surrender or not? Just when Buggy was hesitating whether to lower his face and surrender to Ning Chuan, the pirate ship that was fighting them just now. But suddenly, when everyone was in a daze, a new round of offensive was launched against Buggy and his gang. Young ones, now, let me sink them all into the sea to feed the fish. Boom, boom, boom. After a burst of gunfire, many members of the buggy pirates were knocked down by this intensive attack. Ha ha, you dare to be dazed during the battle. You are really stupid. Then I will send you to death. Kids, keep fighting. Victory belongs to our wild dog pirates. Under the command of the bald captain of this pirate ship, a new round of attacks began to hit the buggy pirates. Only this time, many shells actually fell into the sea near the Ningchuan trio's boat. Nami and Nokigao were so frightened that they quickly hid in the cabin and looked timidly at the pirate ship in the distance. See this scene. The smile on Ning Chuan's face disappeared immediately. How dare you attack my ship? Then I will take it as you are going to declare war on me. The next moment, Ning Chuan's entire body disappeared instantly. When he appeared again, he was behind the bald captain of the wild dog pirates. The wild dog pirates are only worth 2 million Baileys. Such a small amount of money is really not even enough to stuff the gap between your teeth. Say it. The leader of the wild dog pirates had not yet reacted. Ning Chuan's fist fell on the head of the captain of the wild dog pirates. Suddenly, red and white brains splashed on every member of the wild dog pirates. Your captain is dead, do you still want to continue to resist? I'll give you 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, the person who is still holding the weapon. Kill without mercy. Under the threat of death, the entire wild dog pirates group threw away their weapons without any hesitation and knelt on the ground to express their surrender to Ning Chuan. See this scene in front of you. Ning Chuan nodded and temporarily gave up sinking their pirate ship. The idea of getting them all into the ocean to feed the fish. At this time, it's not just the wild dog pirates. Even the buggy pirates heard what Ning Chuan said. Many people also directly laid down their weapons and surrendered to Ning Chuan. Of course, Buggy is not included in these people. Captain, surrender quickly, otherwise you will really die. Vice Captain Mochi kneeled on the ground and whispered to Buggy. Captain, Mochi is right, you should kneel down and surrender. Keep the green hills here, so you don't have to worry about running out of firewood. Survive first, then we can continue sailing. Another deputy captain, Kabaji, also advised the pirates on Buggy's ship who didn't kneel down and surrender. After seeing that their captain did not kneel down, they were still a little stubborn and wanted to fight again. However, when he saw his 2 vice captains kneeling faster than the other, while he was still trying to persuade his own captain Buggy to kneel down, the last line of defense in their hearts was broken through. His knees softened and he fell to the ground. Seeing that all the crew members on his ship had knelt down in the direction of Ning Chuan, Buggy looked in the direction of Ning Chuan, still a little unwilling to admit defeat. How come the weakest Donghai can have such a terrifying guy? Is my great Captain Buggy's journey to becoming a king on the sea about to end? Buggy was very unwilling, but due to the situation in front of him, looking at Ning Chuan who kept walking towards him. In the end, he had no choice but to kneel down in the direction of Ning Chuan. This is just a temporary admission of defeat. My great Captain Buggy cannot be defeated. Return to Buggy's pirate ship. Ning Chuan looked at the many pirates kneeling on the ground. Then he looked at the red-nosed Buggy who had, unwilling to admit defeat, written all over his face. A smile couldn't help but appear on his lips. Sure enough, he is just like Buggy's god tier in the comics. No matter what kind of blow he encounters, he will never lose his ambition. Otherwise, Buggy wouldn't have become the new 4 emperors of the sea. Although he is just a puppet of the 4 emperors, controlled by Hawkeye and Lao Sha, at least he has surpassed most pirates in his life. Think back to Buggy's life in the comics. The smile at the corner of Ning Chuan's mouth became even thicker. Buggy is a guy with great luck. If possible, it would be better not to kill him first. However, since he dares to take action against us, we can't just let him go. What on earth are we going to do with this guy? Ning Chuan couldn't help but fell into deep thought for a while. Ning Chuan, the bounty of these 2 pirate ship captains totals 5 million Baileys. Including the remaining minions, the total bounty is about 7 million Baileys. We are one step closer to the 3 billion bounty agreed with Lieutenant General Garp. Nami and Nokigao held the wanted posters found from the 2 pirate ships. Add them together and report with Ning Chuanwei. Wait, 3 billion bounty. I remember that Buggy's bounty after he became the 4 emperors was a total of 3.189 billion Baileys. This guy has a lot of potential in collecting bounties. If that's the case, why not raise his bounty, and then capture him and hand him over to Garp? Thinking of this, Ning Chuan's eyes suddenly lit up. He thought the idea seemed feasible. A bounty of 3 billion should be enough to kill 2 celestial dragons in the name of Buggy, right? I remember that here in the East China Sea, it seems that celestial dragons often come to visit. The more Ning Chuan thought about it, the more feasible it seemed. So he quickly came to Buggy's side, looking at Buggy with the word, unwilling to admit defeat, written all over his face. The corners of his mouth raised slightly and he stared into Buggy's eyes. Being stared at by Ning Chuan like this, Buggy suddenly felt a little scared in his heart. It seems that this harmless-looking boy in front of me is thinking about something terrible. I said, Red Nose, do you want to make a name for yourself so that your bounty can increase? It should be at the same level as 4 emperors. Ning Chuan stared at Buggy for a long time, and finally said with a smile. 4 emperors level bounty. Wait, what are you going to do? After hearing Ning Chuan's words, Buggy immediately felt a little uneasy in his heart. He felt that this boy Ning Chuan must not be holding anything back. It's nothing. I'll help you increase your bounty and make you famous. Why, don't you want to? When talking about the 3 words, unwilling, Ning Chuan's tone suddenly turned cold. Buggy, who was kneeling on the ground, felt that there was a terrifying monster standing in front of him. You may tear yourself into pieces at any time. He knew that as long as he dared to say no. I'm afraid this kid with extremely terrifying strength will throw himself into the abyss of eternal destruction. Willing. Buggy gritted his teeth and finally said the word, yes. Good. With your potential, you can at least become 4 emperors in the future. And this time, I'm here to help you become the 4 emperors quickly. I heard that Ning Chuan wanted to help him become the 4 emperors. Buggy froze on the spot for a moment, then looked at Ning Chuan with a suspicious face and said, help me become 4 emperors. You kid, are you not joking? Buggy looked at the little kid in front of him who didn't even have any hair. There was deep distrust in his eyes. After all, the boy in front of me is only a little older, yet he dares to talk so brazenly about helping people sit on the throne of the 4 emperors. As Buggy, who came back from the Grand Line, he naturally knows the terrifying strength of the 4 Sea Emperors in the second half of the Grand Line. Although the kid in front of him is very strong. But no matter what, he will not be the opponent of 4 emperors. But even Buggy didn't believe everything Ning Chuan said. But he did not deny it. Because now he is no match for Ning Chuan. He decided to endure it first and see what Ning Chuan wanted to do. Red Nose, you said that if I kill 1 or 2 celestial dragons, the reward should be 3 billion belly, right? As soon as Ning Chuan said these words, Buggy was stunned on the spot. He looked at Ning Chuan with a look of horror. Kill the celestial dragon. How dare this guy think like this? He is challenging the authority of the world government. Once the most noble celestial dragon in the world is killed, he will be hunted down by Marine for the rest of his life. Look at the smile on Ning Chuan's lips and the seriousness in his eyes. Even when he faced off against the Whitebeard fleet, Buggy never gave up. I'm really scared now. It never occurred to him. Ning Chuan's so-called way to make himself famous is to increase the bounty and become the 4 emperors faster. He actually killed 1 or 2 celestial dragons. After hearing Ning Chuan's seemingly understated suggestion, kill 1 or 2 Tianlong people to increase the bounty. Buggy's face turned pale instantly, his body trembled involuntarily, and he was almost crying. The celestial dragons are beings that even the 4 emperors of the New World are not willing to offend easily. Once you become enemies with them, it means that you will have to endure the full pursuit of the entire world government and its subordinate Marine. What he will face is not just the attack of a general. Under such circumstances, I am afraid that even the few lives I have are not enough for these guys. No, are you crazy? Kill 1 or 2 Tianlong people, let alone increase the bounty, we won't even have a chance to survive. Buggy's voice was filled with tears, and he knew how serious the consequences of this action were. Please, little brother, uncle. We really don't need to do this. I admit that you are very strong, much stronger than I thought, but after all, you are the one who kills Tianlong. Even if we want to increase the bounty, we can also use other methods, such as finding Captain Roger's treasure, or doing something else big to increase our reputation and bounty. If it doesn't work, I can earn 3 billion Baileys for you. What do you think? Facing Buggy's pleading, Ning Chuan just smiled slightly and looked at Buggy with fear in his eyes and said slowly. So, you are not willing to agree to me. In this case, there is no use keeping you, so let's send you on the road with the leader of the wild dog pirates. Ning Chuan just finished speaking. A powerful force of armed domination condensed on his hand, and he pressed it directly on Buggy's head. Feeling the domineering force of Ning Chuan's arms. Even if Buggy wants to use his ability to be fragmented at this time to avoid Ning Chuan's immortal grasp. But under Ning Chuan's powerful domineering suppression. But he was shocked to find that his ability could not be used at this time. Surprised. You have been an intern on Roger's ship for such a long time. You should know that hockey can restrain the fruit's ability, right? After Ning Chuan's reminder, Buggy finally remembered this incident. At this time, Buggy knew that he had completely fallen into Ning Chuan's hands. Even his best ability to break into pieces and escape. He was easily controlled by the powerful and terrifying kid in front of him. He knows that if he still wants to live now, he has no choice. He has only one last option left, which is to follow the script Ning Chuan set for him. Then face the problem of dying immediately and dying later. After hesitating for a moment, Buggy finally chose to live alone. After all, there is still a trace of luck in his heart. What if Ning Chuan is not the opponent of the Tianlong people? With the thought of this last lucky break, Buggy finally said with a smile that was uglier than crying. I promise you. No, isn't it just to kill the Tianlong people? Let me, Buggy, become famous for once. After Buggy agreed, Ning Chuan released his big hand holding his head. Let Buggy breathe a little. I remember that a celestial dragon named Charma Kushung recently visited various countries in the East China Sea. Then let's choose this guy as our target. Having said this, Ning Chuan looked at Buggy with a smirk on his face, patted his shoulder and said, I'll catch him when the time comes, and you do it. I'll take pictures for you. After hearing that Ning Chuan had chosen the target of this operation, Buggy, who was still feeling lucky, suddenly froze with a smile that was uglier than crying. Still, do you want to take pictures? What else? We, the 4 emperors Buggy God tier, look so handsome when we angrily kill the celestial dragons. We must have a photo printed on the reward order. Are you right, Buggy? At this time, Buggy was so frightened by Ning Chuan's madness that he could not say a word. When he looked at Ning Chuan, his eyes were full of fear. He couldn't imagine it. In this world, why do such terrible guys exist who want to kill the celestial dragons? Let this be settled like this. Next, your ship will be with us, preparing to capture the celestial dragons and come back to increase the bounty for you. At this point, Ning Chuan changed the subject. After staring at Buggy for a moment, he smiled and said, Besides, I have another idea. When I heard that Ning Chuan had a new idea, Buggy's face suddenly became extremely ugly. He was afraid that Ning Chuan would do something terrible again. Buggy, come and show me your ability to split fruits. After hearing Ning Chuan's words, Buggy was visibly stunned. Show me my fruit power. What does this guy want to do? Buggy couldn't understand Ning Chuan's thoughts for a while. However, although I don't know what Ning Chuan wants to do, but he still followed Ning Chuan's instructions and used his fruit ability. Divide each part of the body into several pieces and fly in midair. Right now, Ning Chuan's big hand suddenly pressed on his split body. The next moment, a stream of air suddenly invaded Buggy's body. He was using his energy to feel the changes in Buggy when he used the power of the fruit. Ning Chuan's sudden move frightened Buggy so much that he froze in place and did not dare to move. System, start settlement. Congratulations to the host for successfully experiencing the power of the split fruit for 1 second and activating the 10,000 times return system. Start practice settlement now. Settlement is successful. Congratulations to the host for successfully obtaining the ability to feel the fruit of falling apart and getting the 10,000 second cultivation level back. Host's understanding of the ability to disintegrate fruits has improved. Really? My system ability also works on devil fruit. After hearing the voice coming from the system in my mind, Ning Chuan's face showed a look of excitement. It turns out that the ability to be torn apart actually works in the body like this. But my understanding is not deep enough. I need to understand it in depth for a while. If I understand this fruit deeply enough, and use this understanding to make the body make corresponding changes, will I turn my body into pieces like this? When he thought of this, Ning Chuan suddenly had the idea of giving it a try. Although he also knew that his idea was a bit nonsense. But Ning Chuan is still ready to give it a try. What if it really happens? In this case, wouldn't it mean that in the future, I would be able to rely on the system to use any fruit ability without side effects? Thinking of this, Ning Chuan continued to put his hand on Buggy's body with a smile on his face. At the same time, he whispered in his mind, "System, continue settlement." Half an hour later, Ning Chuan already has a deep enough understanding of the ability to split fruits. He began to slowly try to keep his body from eating the fruit. Also try to use the ability to break apart the fruit. To be on the safe side, Ning Chuan chose to split his own hair for the first time. After all, hair can grow again if it is gone. Even if it really doesn't grow, it won't do much harm to the body. But if other parts of the body accidentally fail, then something is going to go terribly wrong. However, Ning Chuan would not just split out all his hair. If he can't collect it back, he will have to look for any fruit that can grow hair in the sea. In his first experiment, he first tried dozens of hairs from a clump of hair. Split. As Ning Chuan's heart moved, the next moment, an incredible scene happened. I saw a few strands of his hair slowly starting to separate from his scalp. Just like Buggy's separated limbs before, they floated in the air on their own. At this moment, these hairs seemed to be alive. Under Ning Chuan's control, it rotated lightly around his head. Then he slowly flew past Buggy, who was kneeling on the ground. Then under Buggy's extremely shocked gaze, he quietly returned to his original position. Melted back into the black hair. Buggy looked on in shock. Even his iconic red nose seemed to have become redder than before due to shock. What the hell is going on? Am I dazzled? Why do I feel like this guy's hair seems to be the same as my ability to split fruits? Buggy's voice was full of disbelief. He stared at Ning Chuan, as if looking at a monster. Nami and Nokigao also saw this scene. The two of them walked up to Ning Chuan with some confusion. After searching for a long time on his head, I couldn't find the few hairs that had just split apart and returned to their original places. That's weird. Could it be that I'm dazzled? I just saw hair flying out from Ning Chuan's head. Nami scratched his head and said in disbelief, "You must not be dazzled, I saw it too. However, I didn't find those hairs either." Nuo Qigao also widened his eyes and looked at Ning Chuan with some doubts. Look at the surprised look of several people. Ning Chuan smiled softly. He knew that this was just the beginning. Next, it's time to shock their jaws. System, continue settlement. Congratulations to host for successfully cultivating the ability to split the fruit for 10 seconds and activating the 10,000 times return system. Start practice settlement now. Settlement is successful. Congratulations to the host for successfully obtaining the ability to practice the fruit of splitting into pieces and getting the 100,000 seconds of cultivation back. Host can use the ability to split the fruit into pieces. When I heard the system say that I could simply use the ability to fall apart, Ning Chuan's face finally showed a look of satisfaction. After the previous training, plus the return of 10,000 times of cultivation, now Ning Chuan has an unprecedented understanding of the ability to split fruits. He has mastered the ability to disintegrate himself to the extent that he can precisely control each part of his body when he is divided. He can even maintain a stable distribution of his domineering energy even when his limbs are separated. Ensure that every split body part can be covered with domineering energy in time. Ning Chuan closed his eyes, concentrated his attention, and began to guide his body to split into pieces. This is the first time Ning Chuan has split a limb. It is different from the previous process of splitting hair. You have to be much more careful when splitting limbs. Go out. Following Ning Chuan's low groan, it was as if his body had suddenly broken through its physical limitations. Without any damage to his limbs and torso, they were slowly separated from his body in a way that was beyond the comprehension of ordinary people. It's the same process as before when Buggy activated his fruit ability and let his limbs fall apart. However, it is different from Buggy's instinctive use of abilities after eating the fruit. Ningchuan's fragmentation process appears more orderly. He can clearly perceive the position and status of each separated part. You can even feel that the domineering energy in your body is dispersed in these divided parts. At this time, Ningchuan's consciousness seemed to extend to every divided body part. This allows him to freely control every part and perform precise movements or combinations even if his body is separated. However, at this time, the range within which Ningchuan could control himself to fall apart was not very large. For the time being, it's only about 50 meters around. However, Ningchuan believes that with his continuous cultivation returning 10,000 times, he is able to cover the current distance with ease. Even reaching a control range of thousands of meters in the future is not an exaggeration. Look at the scene happening in front of you. Surrounded by the pirates kneeling on the ground, the two Nami sisters, and the red-nosed Buggy, the owner of the split fruit. Everyone was so shocked by Ningchuan that they couldn't say anything. They watched helplessly as Ningchuan's limbs floated freely in the air, moved at will, and could reorganize and return to their original positions in the blink of an eye. This terrifying ability forced all of them to turn their attention to Buggy on the side. After all, Buggy is the owner of the ability to break apart the devil fruit. However, now Ningchuan can also use Buggy's exclusive devil fruit ability. Why didn't this shock the onlookers? No, it's impossible. Buggy's eyes widened and his jaw almost dropped to the ground. His eyes were fixed on Ningchuan, as if he were looking at a completely unfamiliar creature, with fear in his eyes. How is this possible? The ability of devil fruit is unique. Why can you use my devil fruit ability? Looking at Buggy with a face full of disbelief, Ningchuan smiled and said another thing that made him despair. Has the revelation of your ability to split the fruit scared the shit out of you? Then if I want to use the ability of this split fruit on other people, won't you be scared to death? Listening to Ningchuan's teasing words, Buggy felt as if he had heard the most terrifying thing in the world. Couldn't help but exclaimed, "Impossible, I don't believe it. The split fruit can only affect yourself, how can it affect others? I, a person who has eaten a devil fruit, can't do it. How can you do it?" Buggy's voice was full of shock and disbelief. His iconic red nose was trembling with excitement. Look at Buggy's appearance at this time. Ningchuan smiled and patted Buggy's shoulder gently with his split hand. "Buggy, nothing is impossible for me in this world. If you don't believe it, then try it carefully." After saying that, Ningchuan continued speaking directly in his mind. System, start calculating the cultivation base. Congratulations to host for successfully cultivating the ability to split the fruit for 20 seconds and activating the 10,000 times return system for cultivation. Start practice settlement now. Settlement is successful. Congratulations to the host for successfully obtaining the ability to practice the fruit of splitting into pieces and returning the 200,000 seconds of cultivation. Host can use the ability to split the fruit into pieces. After receiving the return of the cultivation level of the newly divided limbs, Ningchuan put his separated body parts back into place. At this time, he looked at Buggy in front of him and directly pressed his hand on Buggy's body. Several cultivation returns have given him an extremely deep understanding of human limb division. He felt that he could do it at this time and use the fragmentation ability he had mastered on others. Ningchuan took a deep breath and smiled slightly at Buggy, who was held in his palm and dared not move. The next moment, the air around him seemed to freeze. Almost everyone onlookers held their breath and watched the movements of Ningchuan's hands, not knowing what would happen next. Split into pieces. As Ningchuan's heart moved, the ability he mastered to split the fruit was directly transmitted to Buggy through his palm holding Buggy's body. As the fragmented power in Ningchuan's body continued to surge, a subtle but powerful energy began to flow into Buggy from his palms. Buggy's body suddenly began to fall apart uncontrollably. But it's different from before. Before, he consciously used the ability to disintegrate to control the division of his body. But this time the split came more suddenly and was beyond the control of his will. It's like the body is automatically separated. The sudden situation here shocked Buggy. He was so frightened that he stood motionless on the spot, not daring to have the slightest idea of resisting Ning Chuan's power. "Ah!" Buggy suddenly screamed. The next moment, I saw his body turned into countless fragments in the blink of an eye, scattered around. But he soon realized that he was not actually harmed. It was just this sudden split that shocked him. At this time, his facial expression seemed particularly exaggerated as he looked at the scattered body fragments. His eyes were wide open and his mouth was wide open. Apparently he was frightened by this sudden change. "Ning Chuan, you guy, what are you doing? Why did my body fall apart automatically?" Buggy's voice came from all directions, which seemed a little confusing, but more of a shock. Looking at his masterpiece in front of him, Ning Chuan's eyes showed a hint of surprise and excitement. He didn't expect that he would actually use the ability to split fruits on other people. After all, such an ability only existed in the speculations of comic fans before he used it. Not even Buggy the clown who ate the split fruit could do it. And now, Ning Chuan has successfully used it. Since it can tear people apart, can this ability also be used in other places? For example, ships, city walls, or the enemy's abilities and domineering attacks. Or, everything in the world. The more Ning Chuan thought about it, the more excited he became. Now he couldn't wait to find a place to try out his new ability to disintegrate. Looking at the frightened Buggy, he quickly took back his strength. However, he did not reorganize Buggy, but left this task to himself. Ning Chuan came to the ship of the wild dog pirates with excitement on his face. Next, he was going to take the pirate ship in front of him to test out his new abilities. Watching Ning Chuan go away, Buggy was stunned for a long time before he controlled the fragments of his body and began to reassemble. Not long after, he stood on the same spot intact. Although there was no damage to his body. But his face looked extremely pale. Obviously, he has not fully recovered from the shock just now. "This kid, what's going on? Has he already awakened my ability to split the fruit? It's actually able to split everyone else apart." With a hint of doubt, Buggy, who was still in shock, looked at Ning Chuan's actions at this time. At this time, Ning Chuan had already driven all the members of the wild dog pirates onto Buggy's ship. Immediately afterwards, I saw his hand pressed on the bow of the wild dog pirate's ship. Before activating this splitting ability, he did not forget to chant in his heart. "System, settle the last split training. Congratulations to the host for successfully cultivating the ability to split the fruit for 1 minute and activating the 10,000 times return system. Start practice settlement now. Settlement is successful. Congratulations to the host for successfully obtaining the ability to practice the fruit of splitting into pieces and getting 10,000 minutes of cultivation back. Host's ability to be fragmented has been greatly improved. I heard that the repairs returned by the system have arrived." The corners of Ning Chuan's mouth were slightly raised. Looking at the ship under him, he couldn't wait to dismantle it completely. As Ning Chuan gently placed his hand on the deck of the pirate ship, the hearts of those watching around were in suspense. They roughly guessed what Ning Chuan wanted to do next. There was tension in the air around them. Everyone's eyes were focused on his seemingly ordinary hands at this moment, but they contained terrifying power. At the moment everyone was waiting with bated breath. An unprecedented force of division began to spread from Ning Chuan's palm. It quickly penetrated into every corner of the entire pirate ship. Immediately afterwards, an incredible scene happened. This huge wooden structure hull slowly split apart in front of everyone's eyes. It is not simply broken, but is divided into countless complete and small pieces just like when Buggy was split. These fragments are suspended in the air independently, maintaining a subtle distance from each other. Seeing this scene in front of them, everyone onlookers were shocked. This pirate ship is nearly 100 meters long and dozens of meters wide. However, such a big ship was easily split into countless pieces by Ning Chuan. Such an ability is too terrifying. Seeing the scene in front of him, Buggy's eyes almost popped out of his head in shock. He discovered that Ning Chuan not only succeeded in applying the ability to split the fruit to objects other than himself, and it has expanded to such a huge scale. How did he master the ability to disintegrate? It seems to have reached the level of awakening from the legendary split fruit. This kid, what's going on? How the hell did he do all this? A few days later, Ning Chuan spent 100 belly and bought a newspaper from the seagull who delivered the newspaper. Sure enough, the headline on the front page of the newspaper was the image of the celestial dragon Saint Charmik standing on the bow of a ship, firing mercilessly at the ships blocking his route. Ning Chuan remembered it clearly. The ship that Luffy's second brother Sabo took when he first went to sea. It was sunk by one shot from this guy. It seems like this guy really likes to use ordinary people as targets. I don't know how many civilians died in his hands. Thinking of this, Ning Chuan's mouth revealed a sneer. Since you are a heinous fool, let me use you as a target this time. After saying that, Ning Chuan casually threw the newspaper in his hand to Buggy behind him. Buggy picked up the newspaper and read it, and naturally understood Ning Chuan's intention instantly. This is the guy you're going to kill. It's a pity that this time he came by himself. Otherwise, he might have killed two of you and had a good time. Hearing Ning Chuan say such terrifying words in such an understatement, Buggy was so scared that his face almost turned green. This is a celestial dragon. Why doesn't this kid have even the slightest bit of awe? My mind is filled with terrible thoughts of killing the celestial dragons. Although Buggy was complaining in his heart, but he didn't dare show any dissatisfaction on his face. I have been sailing with Ning Chuan for such a long time. He and his subordinates all witnessed Ning Chuan's terrifying strength with their own eyes. Especially during these few days together, Buggy discovered that Ning Chuan's control over the fragmented abilities became more and more terrifying. Just yesterday, him and his pirate crew, I saw with my own eyes that Ning Chuan stretched his hand into the sea. Decompose all the seawater within a radius of 1 kilometer into small water droplets. Even the fish in the sea, Poseidons and even various animals and plants in the sea. None of them escaped Ning Chuan's ability to disintegrate. That alone is not enough. Ning Chuan was actually able to decompose all living things and restore them to their original state. What kind of terrifying control is required to do all this? Buggy can hardly even think about it. At this time, he had completely resigned himself to his fate. Because he knew that whenever he had any idea of escape, then the next moment, he will be with his pirate crew. It was broken into countless pieces by Ning Chuan using terrifying methods of fragmentation, and became the nutrients of the sea. He believed that as long as he dared to escape, Ning Chuan would definitely do so. After all, this guy is someone who dares to kill even the celestial dragons. So what else in this world does he dare not do? I'm afraid there's nothing left. A group of people and 2 boats have been sailing on the sea for a long time. Fortunately, we have Nami, a top navigator. Only then did they catch up with the Tianlong people's ship that was rampaging on the sea at the fastest speed. Looking from a distance, the Tianlong people's ship is like a golden palace floating on the sea. The entire hull is gold-plated and inlaid with various gemstones, shining in the sun like a work of art made of wealth. The flag on the ship that belongs exclusively to the celestial dragons is the most extreme symbol of power in the world. All ships that saw it unconsciously kept their distance from it. On this ship, there are beauties of various styles carefully selected by the celestial dragon Saint Charmik from the East China Sea and other places. They are either singers, dancers, doctors, nurses or any other possible profession. But now, they all have chains with bombs on their necks and have become slaves of the celestial dragons. From the moment they were targeted by Charmakushung, they could only become the playthings of the celestial dragons. On both sides of this luxury ship, it was escorted by 2 world government warships. The 2 warships followed the main ship closely like 2 guardian angels. Once something unexpected happens, they will rush to the enemy ship without hesitation, sacrificing everything for the Tianlong people at any time. These 2 warships are equipped with the most advanced artillery systems in the world. Be ready to respond to any threat. There are a large number of members of the World Government CP organization stationed on the ship. As senior agents of the world government, they are the last line of defense for the celestial dragons. Ning Chuan used his own domineering energy. He easily noticed everything on the 3 ships in the distance. Under his profound gaze, the information on the distant ship was displayed in his mind without any concealment. Using the World Government CP organization as an escort, what a great show. However, to me, the CP organization is not even an appetizer. A sneer curled up at the corner of Ning Chuan's mouth, seeming to show disdain for the upcoming battle. Buggy, speed up towards the celestial dragon's ship. Following his order, Buggy and his men spring into action. Almost instantly, the sails were fully opened. The ship's power is instantly increased. The next moment, their ship was like an arrow leaving the string. He rushed straight towards the celestial dragon ship that symbolized the most noble thing in the world. As their ship speeds up, the two frigates also instantly caught their intentions. There are actually pirates who dare to take advantage of the noble celestial dragon. You're really looking for death. The two captains snorted almost simultaneously. The next moment, the alarms suddenly sounded on the two Tianlong frigates. The members of the CP organization on the deck quickly entered their respective combat positions. The two ships completed their turns almost simultaneously and instantly, their huge bodies creating two spectacular waves on the sea. Heading straight for the boat to Ningchuan. As the ships from both sides gradually approached, the atmosphere on the sea instantly became extremely tense. On the two frigates of the Tianlong people, the most advanced artillery has been adjusted to the best shooting angle. Prepare to wait until the distance is close enough and give Ningchuan and the others a baptism of artillery fire. The distance is enough, fire. Boom, boom, boom. Countless cannons that had been aimed at Ningchuan's ships were pouring out at this moment. The dense cannonballs covered the entire sea area almost in an instant. Facing the overwhelming artillery fire, Ningchuan did not panic. Instead, a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. It was as if everything he saw was what he expected. I saw him stretching forward with one hand, looking at the dense shells in front of him. As his mind moved, fragmented abilities instantly surged out of his palm and quickly spread to the entire space in front of him. Those shells originally carried destructive power. The moment he came into contact with this energy, it was like being cut by countless invisible blades. Decomposed into countless tiny fragments one after another. After a while, these fragments bloomed like fireworks in midair, making bursts of roaring sounds. The smoke and fire cleared. Ningchuan's small boat appeared like ghosts around the two frigates. Looking at the pirate ship that has passed through the sea of gunfire but is still intact. The members of the CP organization on the frigate were instantly stunned. They couldn't believe how that small boat got through their dense sea of guns. Now that you're done fighting, it's my turn. Split into pieces. Ningchuan looked directly at the two world government frigates in front of him. In the past, in the eyes of everyone else, they represented power and majesty. But in Ningchuan's opinion, they are just some trash. Split into pieces. Needless to say, Ningchuan once again used his ability to disintegrate. But this time, he targeted these two huge frigates and the members of the CP organization on board. As Ningchuan's thoughts continued to focus, an invisible but powerful force that could split everything emitted from his hand in an instant. This force quickly enveloped the two behemoths. At this moment, the air seemed to freeze, and time became extremely slow at this moment. Immediately afterwards, an incredible scene happened. Those two frigates are known as the strongest and most advanced equipped frigates in the world government. It's like being cut by countless invisible sharp blades. The metal, armor, hull on the ship, as well as those members of the CP organization who had not had time to escape. All are accurately broken down into countless uniform and small parts silently. The fragments were suspended in the air as if by magic. Then it fell powerlessly into the sea, causing huge waves. This moment, there was only silence in the entire sea, and everyone was stunned by this shocking scene. The two giant ships were easily disintegrated by Ningchuan's ability to disintegrate. Their remains were scattered on the surface of the sea and slowly sank into the depths of the sea. He's a devil fruit user. In the face of sudden disasters, some strong members of the CP organization showed well-trained adaptability. The moment before they felt the crisis coming, they relied on their keen intuition to escape from the frigate that was about to be torn apart. He avoided the fate of being buried at the bottom of the sea like everyone else. After successfully escaping, they stepped on the moonwalk and stopped in the sky. The elites in these CP organizations quickly analyzed the current situation. Finally, they invariably fixed their eyes on Ningchuan, who was not far away. They have discovered the source of all this, Ningchuan, the guy with the terrifying devil fruit ability. What kind of devil fruit is that guy using? One CP member gasped, his tone mixed with shock. I don't know, but the strength is at a terrifying level. Being able to dismantle the world government's top battleships so easily is very difficult to deal with. Another member clenched his fists with a look of determination in his eyes. No matter what, we must take him down even if we risk our lives. We must protect the safety of Tianlong people. Let's go kill that guy who uses devil fruit powers. After confirming that Ning Chuan was the central figure in this shocking incident, they exchanged glances with each other, without even saying any extra words, and quickly formulated their tactics. They prepared to sink the pirate ship Ning Chuan was on. After all, devil fruit users are very afraid of the sea. As long as this guy has nowhere to stay, he will lose sooner or later. After formulating this plan, the remaining CP organization members collectively set out on the moonwalk. In an instant, it rushed to the top of Ningchuan and the others. Lanzhao. Without any hesitation, they all used their strongest attacks. He kicked out a series of terrifying slashes like sword energy, slashing towards the boat where Ning Chuan and others were. Faced with dozens of Daolin kicks kicked out by members of the CP organization, every slash carried a scream that seemed to tear the air apart. The power of these rogue feet is so powerful that even veteran pirates like Buggy feel unprecedented pressure. The pirates beside him behaved even worse. They panicked, some screamed and looked for cover, while others instinctively jumped into the sea, hoping to avoid the continuous terrifying attacks. As for Nami and Nokigao, they both seemed extremely calm in the chaos. The two looked at each other and moved behind Ning Chuan in perfect agreement without any unnecessary movements. They know very well that this place is the safest. Don't be afraid, stand behind me and don't move. Ning Chuan's calm and confident voice eliminated the last trace of uneasiness in their hearts. His figure looked extremely tall at this moment, able to block all dangers for the Nami sisters. Just when those terrifying slashes were about to arrive, a sneer appeared at the corner of Ning Chuan's mouth. System, Cultivation Settlement. Congratulations to host for successfully using the fragmentation ability to fight for 1 minute and activating the 10,000-fold return system. Start practice settlement now. Settlement is successful. Congratulations to the host for successfully obtaining the fragmentation ability and 10,000 minutes of combat experience returned. Host's ability to be torn apart has been greatly improved. After successfully obtaining the new disintegration ability returned by the system, Ning Chuan was originally planning to use his armed domineering force to swat away these slashes. I suddenly had a new idea in my mind. This time, let's try to split these slashes. Thinking of this, Ning Chuan once again stretched out his hand. The fragmented ability once again emanated from his palm at this moment. But this time, what he split was no longer something physical, but some slashes made of qi. The moment Ning Chuan's ability came into contact with these slashes turned out to be the same as the battleship just now, instantly split into countless small pieces by Ning Chuan. Exploded in midair. No, it's impossible. This is a slash made of air and has no entity, but why was it split apart like the battleship? It's difficult. Could it be that this person is a strong man who has awakened his fruit ability? Impossible. He looks so young, how could he have awakened the devil fruit? Just when these surviving CP organization members were shocked, Ning Chuan's figure disappeared from the ship instantly. When his figure appeared again, his armed and domineering fist instantly hit a CP organization member. Ning Chuan's fist was powerful and heavy, blasting this member of the CP organization with one punch with a devastating force. Explosions of blood mist exploded in midair. Defend them all. Iron. After discovering that his companion was killed instantly by Ning Chuan, the other members of the CP organization who were still alive did not hesitate and instantly used their strongest defense. Iron. Boom. Iron. Boom. However, no matter how strong the iron defense is, under Ning Chuan's powerful fist, he was like paper. Without any resistance at all, Ning Chuan punched each one into blood mist. 1 minute later, Ning Chuan returned to his ship. 2 Tianlong frigates together with all CP organization members on them. No one survives yet. Now, the only ship left in the nearby sea area is the Tianlong people. Looking at the luxurious Tianlong ship in front of him, Ning Chuan said to everyone on his ship, "Let's go up and have a look too. Feel the luxury of this world noble." climb aboard the celestial dragon's luxurious ship. Ningchuan and his party seemed to have stepped into another world. The level of luxury on this ship is simply worse than the rumors on the sea. The ship is decorated with various splendid decorations and exquisite works of art. And those rare treasures collected from all over the world, all showing off the owner's overwhelming power. Two children, Nami and Nokigao, are full of curiosity about everything around them. Their eyes sparkled with excitement as they looked at the splendid decorations. They looked around and explored every corner. For them, everything on the ship is so novel. Ningchuan, can we take away these exquisite murals and decorations? Looking at the little stars in Nami's eyes, Ningchuan smiled and said, just take whatever you want, but if it's too big, the boat may not fit it. After hearing Ningchuan's agreement, Nami and Nuo Chigao showed a hint of excitement on their faces. Therefore, when looking at every beautiful decoration, the two of them could stop and admire it for a long time. Occasionally, they would discuss in a low voice, looking at this item and looking at that item, as if they were choosing which one they could take away. In contrast, Buggy and his men were mostly attracted by the beauties on the ship and the mountains of treasure. They exclaimed from time to time, and some even began to think about how to get these treasures into their bags. Standing in the distance, the celestial dragon Saint Charma Kushung looked at the group of pirates who dared to board his ship with eyes full of anger. At this time, he was tightly surrounded by a group of guards wearing black suits. These guards are well trained, and you can tell at a glance that they are the best of the best. The moment Ningchuan and others boarded the boat, they quickly formed a human wall to block Saint Charmic's body. At the same time, he watched Ningchuan and his party vigilantly, and his hands had quietly touched the weapons at his waist. As long as Ningchuan and others dare to make any dangerous moves, they will shoot without hesitation. Untouchable, how can something belonging to world noble be touched by untouchables like you? Kneel down and die. The roar of the celestial dragon Charma Kushung instantly broke the tranquility on the ship. His contemptuous word, untouchable, attracted the attention of everyone present. Some of the pirates' feet were weakened by this untouchable curse. After all, this is a celestial dragon, a being that cannot even be looked at directly. When faced with their anger, it is natural to feel timid. But the other small group of pirates had anger burning in their eyes. Obviously they have boarded the Tianlong people's ship, and the Tianlong people will soon become their spoils of war. But even so, the Tianlong people still dare to put on airs and angrily call them untouchables. And let them kneel down to die. What a condescending gesture. Naturally, it aroused their anger. But when they thought about what they were going to do next with Captain Buggy, they lost their heads. They all calmed down and looked coldly at the crazy Charmaine. Untouchable, dirty pirate, go to hell. When he saw that none of the people on the ship listened to him, Charma Kushung's anger could not be suppressed at last. He picked up the golden spear in his hand, pointed it at Ningchuan without hesitation, and pulled the trigger. Bang! A specially made extremely powerful bullet quickly cut through the air and hit Ningchuan's side. However, Ningchuan's reaction was so fast that it was unimaginable. I saw the armed domineering energy all around him surge up instantly, covering his arms. The bullet containing the anger of the Tianlong people was caught by Ningchuan the moment it hit. Immediately afterwards, Ningchuan split the bullet into a large number of fragments. Throw it back the way it came from. The shrapnel of the bullet quickly passed through the crowd, and each fragment accurately hit the heads of the guards wearing black suits around the Tianlong people. These well-trained guards were hit in the head by this sudden attack before they had time to mount an effective defense. One after another fell down, and red and white things filled the whole place. How dare you attack Tianlongren's loyal bodyguard? You are declaring war on the world government. Seeing all the guards around him fall down, Charma Kushungfei did not feel afraid. The anger on his face was even stronger than before. Declaring war on the world government? Doesn't matter. This is my purpose. Hearing that Ningchuan had come specifically to kill him, Charma Kushung was stunned for a moment. Just when he thought he heard it wrong and wanted Ningchuan to say it again, Ningchuan's big slap directly broke the square glass cover on his head and slapped him hard on the face. Just this one blow shattered countless of his teeth. You, how dare you attack the great celestial dragon? Next, the whole sea will no longer have you. Crack. Before he finished speaking, Ning Chuan's big slap fell on his face again. All his remaining teeth were knocked out. Since when have you been able to pretend like this? The world government is so awesome, why doesn't it come and kill me? After saying that, Ning Chuan kicked Charma Kushung in the abdomen and kicked him dozens of meters away. Hit the railing hard. A mouthful of blood spurted out. After witnessing Ning Chuan's atrocities against the Tianlong people, everyone present was stunned on the spot and fell into an incredible shock. The celestial dragons are the ruling class of this world. It has always been regarded as the most noble existence. Now, in front of a young man, he lost his former majesty and was pushed to the ground and beaten randomly by him. Almost instantly, fear and panic spread among the crowd. He really took action against the celestial dragons. Did he really not want his life? A pirate crew member murmured in disbelief, his face pale and his eyes full of horror. Captain Buggy, what should we do now? He actually broke through the guard's protection and beat up the celestial dragons. Another subordinate asked quietly, with obvious panic in his voice. They all know how serious the consequences of angering the Tianlong people are. But Ning Chuan's powerful methods prevented them from making any rash moves. At this time, Buggy had mixed emotions. On the one hand, he knew how terrifying the celestial dragon's revenge would be. At this moment, running away seemed to be the most rational choice. But the strength displayed by Ning Chuan prevented him from making any plans to escape. He knew that once he left the ship now, he would probably be turned into pieces and thrown into the sea to feed the fish like everyone else. After a period of confusion, Buggy's eyes suddenly turned blood red. He has already made a decision in his own mind. Calm down, everyone. Buggy lowered his voice, trying not to let his fear leak out and infect his subordinates. Now is not the time to run away. We have boarded the Tianlong ship. Even if we escape, we will definitely be regarded as the most wanted criminals by the world government. If we are caught, we will definitely be executed. In that case, let's just stop doing it. Let's do a feat that will shock the world. Anyway, we have no retreat now. We are going to die no matter what, so why not die like a hero? Under Buggy's impassioned speech, the pirates under him actually seemed to have been brainwashed. Looking at Charma Kushung lying on the ground, there was a hint of madness in his eyes. Ning Chuan was naturally very satisfied with the reaction of the pirates. Feeling that it was almost time, Ning Chuan smiled and turned to Buggy and said, "Buggy, bring your people over here. Next, you will be the first batch of warriors who dare to take action against the celestial dragons and the world government." Chapter 31. He looked at Buggy and others who were still in a daze. Ning Chuan stretched out one foot and kicked the Tianlong man to Buggy like a rag with a clean movement. This move once again made everyone present take a breath. Seeing the celestial dragon falling in front of him, cold sweat broke out on Buggy's face. Although he knew that he would be forced by Ning Chuan to do something big that would shock the whole world. But he still hasn't recovered from his nervous state. At this time, the celestial dragon Charma Kushung, who was covered with injuries, was still trying to maintain his dignity as a celestial dragon. He glared hard at the people around him and cursed continuously in his mouth. The proud identity of the Tianlong people made him absolutely not want to bow to Ning Chuan and the others even in such a desperate situation. Because in his heart, these untouchables dare not kill him. "You despicable pirates, do you know who I am? How dare you attack me? The world government will not let you go." Charmik's words were full of threats. However, the trembling in his tone revealed his fear at this time. Tisk tisk. Sure enough, after you have been in a high position for a long time, you no longer know that you are a waste. Ning Chuan looked at Charma Kushung and sneered. Then I saw him pressing his hand on the deck of the ship. Following his thoughts, the next moment, all the wooden boards on the deck of the ship were split into extremely small pieces by Ning Chuan. Under Ning Chuan's control, these extremely small pieces were quickly put back together. An execution platform tens of meters high was formed. Looking at the execution platform appearing in front of him, whether it's Buggy or his group of pirates, at this moment everyone understood Ning Chuan's plan. He actually wanted to put this Tianlong man to death on the execution platform. Killing directly and going to the execution stand have completely different meanings. "Buggy, take this guy up. I'm here to take pictures for you, and I will definitely show you your most handsome figure." Ning Chuan's mouth showed a hint of a smirk. Seeing Buggy and his men who were almost frightened, they started urging them. Gudong. Buggy swallowed hard and calmed down his extremely excited brain. He looked at his subordinates behind him who had been impressed by his speech just now. His heart skipped a beat, he gritted his teeth, and went up to pick up the collar of Saint Charma and pulled him to the execution platform. Buggy's men looked at this scene and all shouted with excitement. Captain Buggy, Lord Buggy, you are the first warrior who dares to kill the celestial dragon. I've done it. If I can see Lord Buggy killing the celestial dragons at the scene, even if I die, I won't regret following Lord Buggy. Master Buggy is so powerful, let's overthrow the world government together. When Buggy and his pirates put Saint Chalmuk on the execution platform, Charma Kushung's eyes finally revealed a look of horror that could not be concealed. At this moment, he finally realized the seriousness of the situation. It turns out these pirates are not bluffing, they are serious. I really want to kill myself and challenge the world government. At this time, Charma Kushung's body had begun to tremble slightly. His previous arrogance were instantly replaced by fear. I even peed my pants out of extreme panic. The light yellow liquid dripped down his clothes and fell under the execution platform. Ha ha ha. The Tianlong people were so scared that they peed. It seems that the Tianlong people are just like us ordinary people, they are also afraid when they are dying. Ha ha ha. The Tianlong people were scared to death by me, Lousy's life is worth it. Listen to the jeers of the pirates below. Saint Chalmers almost fell into complete despair. He shook his body crazily, trying to break free from the wooden board that was suppressing him. At the same time, he looked at the pirates below and shouted. No. Don't kill me. Whoever comes to rescue me, I can give you everything you want. Treasures, power, whatever you want, I can give you. Please, don't kill me. Don't kill me. This moment. The celestial dragon, Charma Kushung, finally let go of his usual arrogance. He actually started begging to the untouchable in his eyes. His voice was full of trembling and despair. Facing the Tianlong people's plea, Ning Chuan's eyes were deep, and the corners of his mouth could not help but raise slightly, and he looked at Buggy with a smile and reminded him. The time is coming, let's start quickly. Delay some more time, and you won't have time to escape. Hear Ning Chuan's reminder. Buggy's whole body suddenly shivered. He knew what Ning Chuan said was right. 10 minutes have passed since they attacked the Tianlong fleet. Marine and world government must have received the message. If I don't hurry up, I'm afraid I won't even be able to escape. Whether it's attacking or killing the celestial dragons, it's a capital crime. If that's the case, then it might as well be. Buggy was heartbroken, stepped on Charma Kushung's head with his foot, straightened his back and looked at the pirates below and said. Everyone, starting from today, our Buggy pirates will accomplish the only feat in the world. Our bounty will surpass the 4 emperors, and our reputation will spread throughout the sea. Whoosh! As soon as Buggy finished speaking, the long knife in his hand quickly swung out. He chopped off the head of Charma Kushung. Crack! Crack! Ning Chuan seized the most critical moment and took several photos in succession. The moment when Buggy slashed the celestial dragon's head off with his sword was recorded. Did I really kill the Tianlong people? Buggy looked at the flying head and his heart went blank. Just when he was at a loss, Ning Chuan's voice, like a devil's whisper, rang in his ears. Buggy, this is a photo of you when you killed the Draco. Take a few of them, and I'll help you contact the King of News, Morgans, and ask him to publicize the big thing you did. After saying that, Ning Chuan threw the photo in his hand to Buggy with a smirk on his face. Then I saw him hugging Nami and Nokigao, and jumped back into their boat. Buggy, I suggest you run away quickly. In 20 minutes at most, Marine's large force will probably arrive. At the same time, Marine Base Marinefando. In the Marine Fleet Admiral Sengoku office, the phone on the desk dedicated to contacting the world government suddenly rang. This is Marine Headquarters. As soon as Sengoku picked up the phone, he heard the annoying voice of 5 elders on the phone. Saint Chalmuk died in the East China Sea, which you Marines say is the safest place. The moment I heard the news, Warring State's pupils instantly dilated several times, and his whole body froze in place as if struck by lightning. He muttered with disbelief on his face. Charmako, holy heaven, celestial dragon. Oh my god, is the celestial dragon dead? This world is finally going to change. Hang up the phone. Warring States sat behind the large desk, frowning. The call that just ended made his face as black as a briquette. East China Sea, why is it the East China Sea again? The emergence of One Piece Roger is not enough, there is also the rebel leader Monkey D. Dragon. There is a guy named Shanks who is in the limelight recently. He seems to have come from the East China Sea, and he will soon become the 4 emperors in the New World. Forget it, why is there now another pirate group that dares to kill even the celestial dragons? At this time, Warring States' eyes were full of helplessness. He really couldn't understand why there weren't many small-time pirates in the entire East China Sea. But there are so many guys who specialize in big things. East China Sea, after successfully executing Roger here. It has always been regarded as a place symbolizing the peace of the sea by marine and world government. But now, Warring States thought in his mind for a long time, and his fingers unconsciously tapped on the table, making a dull sound. After a while, Warring States looked at his little secretary and said seriously, calling the 3 generals back for an emergency meeting. And that old fool Garp, don't let him wander around outside. Call him back together. After receiving the order, the secretary immediately went to follow Sengoku's order and began to notify the 3 current generals and Garp, the marine hero. This time, the world noble celestial dragons were involved. This is more trouble than ever. Soon, the 3 generals Akainu, Aokiji, and Kizaru rushed to the conference room as quickly as possible. They looked at Sangguo, who was sitting there with a gloomy face that was about to drip. The 3 of them looked at each other, and they all guessed that something terrible had happened. At this time, the atmosphere in the conference room was frozen to the extreme. Looking at Sangguo, who was sitting there without saying a word, silently sorting out the materials. The 3 generals Akainu, Aokiji, and Kizaru looked at each other. Sure enough, they were right. From the serious expression of the Warring States period, it is easy to feel the seriousness of the situation. Looking at the 3 generals who have arrived, Warring States was silent for a moment and finally spoke. A celestial dragon was killed in the East China Sea, and the murderer was a pirate. As the news of the Warring States General Tianlong being killed in the East China Sea slowly came out. When the 3 generals heard this, they were all shocked. What? The Tianlong people were killed? Or in the East China Sea? These pirates deserve the death penalty. Akainu reacted first, frowning. His eyes were burning with anger, and he could never tolerate such pirates' behavior that dared to challenge the authority of the world government. Aokiji looked thoughtful. There was a complicated light reflected in his pupils, and it was unclear what his attitude was towards this matter. After a moment of silence, he slowly spoke. It's better to block this news as soon as possible. If it spreads, I'm afraid it will cause unpredictable trouble. Listen to Akainu and Aokiji. Although Kizaru still maintained a nonchalant attitude, his eyes could not help but reveal some seriousness. It seems like I need to leave as soon as possible. Hearing Kizaru's words, Warring States nodded. That's what I meant. You are the fastest. Go to the East China Sea immediately to see what is going on. When you get to the East China Sea, bring back all those bold fools and try to catch them alive. Warring States had just finished speaking. Suddenly, a marine who was responsible for intelligence hurried into the conference room. Ignoring Sangguo's ugly expression, he directly placed the situation in his hands on his desk. Warring States received the information and after a quick glance, his face suddenly became more gloomy. I saw him clenching the information in his hand into a ball and cursing angrily. Morgans, this fool, he doesn't report any good things, but he directly reports the news that will cause turmoil in the world. Akainu looked at the newspaper Sengoku slapped on the table. He picked it up and looked at it. Not long after watching, his face became as gloomy as the Warring States period. How dare you execute a celestial dragon by execution? The courage of these pirates is truly boundless. Hearing Akainu's words, Aokiji and Kizaru were all shocked. They all took the newspapers from Akainu's hands. I saw very clearly that the front page of the newspaper had a photo of a pirate with a red nose holding up a long sword and beheading a celestial dragon. And the title of this news is even more explosive. Behead the celestial dragons. The red-nosed buggy will open a new era for the world. These pirates are really crazy. It seems that in the next period of time, if we don't catch this bold guy, we won't have time to rest. Listening to the conversation between his three generals, Sengoku slammed the table, looked at Akainu and the other three and said seriously. Kill the Tianlong people by execution, and these pirates will not be allowed to stay. The news has been sent out, and then the whole world will focus on us marine. Aokiji, Akainu, let's go to the East China Sea together and make sure to catch all these fools. Kizaru, you stay at the headquarters. If something happens after we leave, it will be up to you to support other places. Under the intentional guidance of News King Morgans, the news that the celestial dragon Saint Charmik was executed by the red-nosed pirates spread quickly across the world like a prairie fire. The leader of the Revolutionary Army, Monkey D. Long, looked at the newspaper he just got in his hand. His eyes were deep, and he didn't know what he was thinking about. After a long time, he looked at the Demon King Ivankov beside him and said seriously. The Tianlong people were actually executed by a little pirate named Buggy. I didn't expect that my hometown, Donghai, would become the eye of the storm this time. It seems that the revolutionary opportunity we have been waiting for a long time has finally appeared. And on an island in the New World, the red-haired Shanks, who was having a banquet, was holding a wine glass with a meaningful smile on his lips. Ha ha ha, Buggy, I didn't expect that this guy like you would dare to do this. You dared to take pictures while executing Tianlong people, which makes me a little stranger to you. There was a hint of amusement in Shank's tone, and a hint of worry in his eyes. It seems that the world is about to become chaotic, but there is still no news about Joey Boy mentioned by Captain Roger. Wano King's Palace. Kaido threw the newspaper in his hand and sneered. HMPH, interesting. I didn't expect the Tianlong people to start bleeding too. It seems that this world is finally going to be truly chaotic. That's fine, this world is quite boring anyway. If there is chaos, it can make this boring world a little more exciting, right? Kaido's tone was full of desire for chaos. The more chaotic the world is, the more opportunities there are for ambitious people like him to rise. On the island of the Sphinx, Whitebeard, when he learned that a kid named Buggy executed the celestial dragons, there was a look of surprise on his old face. Buggy, is he the red-nosed kid on Roger's ship? I didn't expect this guy to dare to do this. Roger, the brats you brought out are actually so bold. The celestial dragons have all been executed, so will the Joey Boy you were waiting for be about to appear. Cake Island, the ant who is also one of the 4 emperors. After hearing the news that the Tianlong people were executed, the laughter caused the mountains of deserts on the surrounding islands to fall down. Ha ha, the celestial dragons will actually have this day. This guy with the red nose is really brave. Why don't you send someone to the East China Sea to capture this boy as my husband? I, Lin, like bold men. At this time, the leaders of the major forces around the world all saw the execution of the Tianlong people in the newspapers. Everyone already knows, this world may be turned upside down. Yes, Morgans is indeed the king of news. The speed at which newspapers are published is really fast. Ning Chuan looked at the report in his hand that recorded the news of the execution of the celestial dragon Saint Chalmuk by Buggy and the dispatch of Marine to the East China Sea. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. Next, the entire East China Sea should become the focus of the world's attention. Being able to fight against all the powerful men, just thinking about it makes me feel a little itchy. It's just that I feel sorry for Buggy. I'm afraid his life will be difficult. Ning Chuan put down the newspaper in his hand. He picked up the ice lemon tea in his hand and took a big sip. He looked at the 2 sisters who were squeezing their shoulders and beating their legs and said with a smile. Nami, Nokigao, harder. If you can't even exert your energy for a massage, then if you want to practice spiritual practice, you're still far away. Hearing Ning Chuan's words, Nami and Nuo Chigao both pouted and used all their strength to massage Ning Chuan. HMPH, you're obviously not much older than me, how can you be so strong? The flesh on your body is too hard, you can't even pinch it. Nami's face turned red from suppressing her emotions. But Ning Chuan, who was pinched, hardly, by her, had a satisfied smile on his face. Yes, this is the strength. Keep it up, pinch it for a while, and once you develop your strength, you can start practicing. Nogi Kaoya will be perfect if he works harder. The two of them squeezed and beat Ning Chuan for a long time. Tired, they sat down on the ground and drank the iced lemon tea Ning Chuan drank in one gulp. Call, how abominable. I've never heard anyone say that they pinch their shoulders and beat their legs before practicing. Ning Chuan, are you lying to us? Nami pinched her waist, looked at Ning Chuan fiercely and said dissatisfiedly. You're right, I remember when Lieutenant General Garp taught you, he didn't ask you to pinch his shoulders or beat his legs, right? Ning Chuan, if you don't tell the truth, we will bite you. Nuo Chigao, who had always been well behaved, now looked at Ning Chuan with a fierce expression. Look at the cute looks of this pair of sisters. Ning Chuan smiled slightly and avoided the topic directly. They saw him pointing at the large ship passing by on the sea in the distance, diverting their attention. Look, that ship should be the army sent by the Alabasta country on the Grand Line. The two sisters, Nami and Nuo Chigao, were easily diverted by Ning Chuan. They looked at the big ship passing by in the distance and couldn't help but say. Alabasta, is that the country you mentioned that was built in the desert? Why are they here to reinforce Donghai? Nami looked at the warships passing by in a hurry and couldn't help but said. This should be the 10th ship from another country to appear in the East China Sea, right? It seems that the Tianlong people's execution had a really big impact. Nokigao took out his little notebook and counted it carefully. I found that they had encountered many ships from other countries in the past 2 days. Looking at the two sisters who were discussing the situation, Ning Chuan took out the latest newspaper, pointed at the big words on the front page and said with a smile. It's not just the countries that have joined the world government that are waging war, look here. This incident of executing the celestial dragons led the Marine Fleet Admiral warring states, which had not left their nests for thousands of years, to the East China Sea. One fleet admiral and 2 generals are taking action. It seems that Buggy's survival game will become more difficult again. Looking at Ning Chuan, he didn't seem to care. Nuo Chigao couldn't help but worry a little. Ning Chuan, do you think Marine will find out that we were also involved in this incident? Seeing Nuo Chigao's worried look, Ning Chuan stretched out his hand and rubbed her head, comforting her. Don't worry, Buggy did all this. The photos were taken and they were promoted to the whole world for him. He can't escape no matter what. Once his bounty comes out, all we need to do is capture him and hand him over to Garp. Then the debt between Garp and I will be completely settled. Listening to Ning Chuan's plan, Nami shook her cute head and said seriously. Ning Chuan, you are really bad. But, who made Buggy want to deal with us? If he falls into your hands, it will be bad luck for him. So, what are we going to do now? Should we go with the warships of these big countries to see the excitement? Seeing the excitement in Nami's eyes, Ning Chuan shook his head and spoke with a smile. Don't worry, let the bullets fly for a while. The protagonist usually appears at the most critical moment. I estimate that not only people from the world government are here this time, but also the forces in the sea that are hostile to the world government don't want to miss this excitement. So, now is not the best time to join in the fun. At this point, Ning Chuan changed the topic and looked at the two of them with a smile. I have a place I want to go, let's go and see it together. Hearing Ning Chuan's words, Nami and Nuo Chigao couldn't help but raise their heads, curiously waiting for Ning Chuan to speak. In Shimotsky village, located in the East China Sea, you can not only learn sword skills here, but you can even learn how to make swords. At that time, I will give you two a supremely sharp knife. As soon as Ning Chuan finished speaking, a bunch of little stars appeared in the eyes of Nami and Nuo Chigao. The supreme sharp knife. But is it really that easy to make a supremely fast sword? Nami and Nuo Chigao both heard from Ning Chuan about the ranking of weapon strength in the world. They also all know how difficult it is to create a supremely sharp knife. However, seeing Ning Chuan's confident look at this time, the two of them suppressed their doubts in their hearts. After such a long time together, they understand very well that Ning Chuan is a guy who cannot be viewed with ordinary people's eyes. Maybe he can really make a supremely sharp knife for the two of them. Ning Chuan relied on himself to provide Morgans with photos of Buggy beheading the celestial dragons. Successfully obtained the location of Shimotsky village in the East China Sea from him. This is an extremely remote place. Since the Shimotsuki clan left Wano country, they have been living in seclusion in this unknown village and are rarely known to outsiders. But even such a hidden place was successfully discovered by Morgan's newspaper delivery Seagull Army. Morgan's is quite reliable. It seems that if we plan to make any big news again in the future, we still need to contact him. Wait until the three people's boat successfully docked at the port of Shimotsuki village. Ning Chuan hugged the two sisters and jumped off the boat with a smile. After sailing on the sea for a long time, you will inevitably miss the down-to-earth feeling. Just when Ning Chuan and the other two were preparing to walk into the village, suddenly, he saw a green-haired boy about the same age as the three of them. He was carrying a huge sandbag and doing push-ups hard on the beach. Beside this young man, there are 3 wooden swords stuck straight out. The moment I saw this young man who was practicing hard, the corners of Ning Chuan's mouth turned up unconsciously, and he couldn't help but speak. I didn't expect it to be such a coincidence. I met little Zoro as soon as I got off the boat. Nami and Nogi stood on the beach, looking seriously at Zoro, who was sweating profusely not far away. He is carrying a load that exceeds several times his own weight, working hard to cultivate his own strength. After doing countless push-ups, he threw the oversized sandbag on his back. After putting on new weights, he picked up the 3 wooden swords stuck aside without hesitation. He continued to practice his unique 3-sword technique. Every time he swings his sword, the muscles in his body are extremely tense. At this time, his hard work and concentration made the onlookers Nami and Noki Joya moved. This guy with hair like seaweed is practicing so seriously. If we could have him practice so diligently, wouldn't we be able to make considerable progress soon? Nami and Nokigao couldn't help but sigh. After hearing what they said, Ning Chuan reached out and tapped each of them on their heads. If you can work half as hard as this guy when practicing, then I can save a lot of energy. Let's go, don't disturb other people's practice. Let's go take a look inside the village. After saying that, Ning Chuan walked towards the entrance of Shimotsuki village. Nami and Nijigao looked at Zoro, who was practicing hard, and then looked up at Ning Chuan's back. There was a strange look on their faces. In their impression, Ning Chuan's daily practice seemed to be very relaxed. He was completely different from the green-haired boy in front of him. They had never seen Ning Chuan sweating from exhaustion while practicing. For some reason, Ning Chuan always seems to be able to practice in a relatively relaxed state. For example, the Kun boxing set he developed. Nami and her sister practiced secretly countless times in private. But they all felt like there was no improvement at all. At most, my waist has become more flexible, and my shoulders are more powerful than before when hitting things. But it is completely different from Ning Chuan, who can improve a lot after every practice. In their memories, no matter what Ning Chuan was practicing, he always seemed to be able to do it with ease. It seems that the improvement of strength and skills is a natural process for him. Compared to the young man in front of him who was practicing so hard, Ning Chuan's practice process was really too easy. Ning Chuan, how did he do it? At this time, both Nami and Nokigao felt a little curious. However, they know it. This may be Ning Chuan's unique ability, and others will never be able to learn it. And if they want to become stronger, I'm afraid they can only follow the path of ascetic cultivation taken by the young man in front of them. No matter how difficult the next practice is, I will continue to become stronger. Even if you can't help Ning Chuan fight the enemy, at least you can't become a burden to him. At this moment, Nami and Nokigao had such an idea in their minds. The two of them have made up their minds, and they will start practicing well. Ning Chuan walked into Shimotsuki village. Soon I found out the location of Koshiro's Shinkenshu dojo from the villagers. Ning Chuan and the other 3 quickly arrived at the door of the dojo. As soon as I entered the dojo, the wooden floor under my feet couldn't help but start to make a slight sound. The air here is filled with the smell of sawdust and sword oil used to maintain wooden swords. It seems that this swordsmanship dojo should have existed for a long time. Directly in front of Ning Chuan is the elegant and bespectacled Shimotsuki Koshiro. He is patiently instructing a group of young children to practice swordsmanship. Although their sword-swinging movements were immature, everyone was very focused and serious when swinging their swords. Among the many children, one girl stood out. Her swordsmanship is smooth and powerful, and every swing of the sword is just right. Looking at the determined expression on her face, it seems that every sword she wields contains determination beyond her years. Looking at the strong girl in front of him, Ning Chuan recognized her identity almost immediately. This girl with excellent swordsmanship is none other than Koshiro's daughter, Kuina. When the three people from Ningchuan entered the kendo hall, Koshiro noticed the three of them. He turned his head, nodded politely to Ning Chuan, and signaled them to wait a moment. Ning Chuan smiled and nodded in response, with Nami and Nuaochi Gao standing aside quietly, observing the training of the children. However, when Ning Chuan looked at Kuina, his eyes stayed on her for a while. He could see that Kuina's current swordsmanship strength was indeed much better than that of little Zoro. If it weren't for that abominable, supreme grand staircase, I'm afraid East China Sea will produce another female swordsman who is as powerful as Zoro in the future. After finishing a period of training, Koshiro allows children to move freely. He narrowed his eyes slightly and stepped towards Ningchuan and the others. Welcome to Eishin Kenshu Dojo, I am Koshiro, the owner here. Whose children are you three? Why haven't I seen you in the village? Koshiro's voice was calm, with a hint of the calmness unique to a swordsman. Ning Chuan smiled slightly and answered very politely. Hello, Director Koshiro, my name is Ningchuan, and I am a fan of swordsmanship. We come from Koko West Village in the East China Sea, and we hope to learn some knowledge about kendo and sword making from you. Hearing Ningchuan's words, Koshiro was suddenly stunned. He didn't expect that someone would come to him from such a faraway place to learn swordsmanship, and they were three children. Just three of them dared to sail such a long distance on the sea to get here. This courage is really admirable. However, this was not what surprised him the most. What surprised Koshiro even more. The boy who is the leader of the three people not only knows that he can swordsmanship, but he also knows that he can make swords. You must know that in the entire East China Sea, there are really not many people who know this. The surprise on Koshiro's face flashed away. He took a few steps closer, looked at Ning Chuan carefully, and stared at him for a while before finally speaking. Little guy, you are very well informed. Indeed, our Shimotsuki family not only studies swordsmanship, but also sword making. But, little guy, swordsmanship is easy to learn and teach, but when it comes to sword making, it depends on talent. I can't guarantee whether you can teach me or not. Ning Chuan smiled slightly, with a hint of sincerity in his eyes. Mr. Koshiro, just feel free to teach me. I, Ning Chuan, am still somewhat confident in my talent. Seeing the confidence on Ning Chuan's face, Koshiro couldn't help but become more curious about Ning Chuan. According to the little guys he usually comes into contact with. But no one is as confident in himself as Ning Chuan. Interesting boy, Koshiro commented in his mind. Since you have traveled thousands of miles to come to our small dojo, then you can stay here for a while. Start with the very beginning of swordsmanship. Only after you have mastered the sword can you start learning to make swords. After all, how can a guy who doesn't even understand how to play with a sword make a good sword? I heard that Koshiro had agreed that the three of them would stay here. A smile appeared on Ning Chuan's face. Then I saw him casually digging out of his pocket and taking out a money bag filled with gold coins. Without any hesitation, he threw the heavy money bag into Koshiro's hands. This is our tuition fee. Of course it also includes the cost of materials for learning how to make swords. Koshiro took Ningchuan's money bag with a strange look on his face. He could feel that the money bag contained something different than Bailey. With a trace of curiosity, he opened the money bag and took a look. The large gold coins inside shimmered with alluring golden light, which almost blinded Koshiro, who always likes to squint. Here, these gold coins. The total amount is probably more than 10 million Baileys. These three children are so inhumane. So much money, just tuition fees. Where did these three little guys come from? Did they come to the dojo specifically to support me? Koshiro looked at the money bag in his hand and froze on the spot. I felt a little at a loss for a while. Kuina looked at her father who was suddenly stunned. So she stepped forward to take a look with curiosity. When she saw the big gold coins in the bag, she was stunned like Koshiro. Money, a lot of money. After a long time, the father and daughter recovered from the shock. The eyes they looked at Ningchuan and the others were much more curious than before. Now that you have accepted the money, let's get ready to start. As soon as Ning Chuan finished speaking, he walked to the side where the wooden swords were placed, casually pulled out a wooden sword and held it in his hand. Nami and Nokigao on the side also followed suit and each took out a wooden sword and held it in their hands. After seeing that Ningchuan and the others were ready to join the training in their own kendo hall, Koshiro shook his head helplessly and put away the large gold coin thrown by Ningchuan. He took out a wooden knife and came to the Ningchuan trio. I'll teach you some basic things first and see how talented you are in swordsmanship. After saying that, Koshiro slowly drew out the wooden sword from his waist, his movements calm and elegant. He looked at the three Ning Chuan people, and then directly demonstrated to them a set of basic swordsmanship movements that seemed simple but actually contained the essence of his many years of swordsmanship. Every gesture and every swing of his sword reflects his unique understanding of the art of swordsmanship. Koshiro's plan is to first teach the three Ningchuan a set of basic swordsmanship moves. Then let them demonstrate to themselves to see how talented the three of them are in swordsmanship. He can teach the three people in accordance with their different talents. However, what he didn't expect was, in the process of my own demonstration, Ning Chuan has actually started practicing with him. Wait until he has finished practicing a set of sword skills. Ning Chuan also lowered the long sword in his hand. On the side, Nami and Nuo Chigao were going to practice with Ning Chuan. He was holding up the long sword in his hand with a confused look on his face. The two of them only remembered a few of the movements, and some details were not written down at all. Ning Chuan, you actually practiced with me just now? Koshiro asked in disbelief. Ning Chuan did not answer, but nodded silently. At the same time, he spoke in his heart. System, start calculating the cultivation base. Congratulations to host for successfully practicing a set of swordsmanship and activating the 10,000 times return system for your cultivation level. Start practice settlement now. Settlement is successful. Congratulations to host for successfully receiving a refund for practicing 10,000 sets of sword skills. Host's knowledge of Koshiro's swordsmanship has been greatly improved. Hear the voice of the system in your head. The corners of Ning Chuan's mouth turned up unconsciously. He has received the return of his cultivation. Now I can completely and skillfully execute the set of swordsmanship I just practiced. Koshiro on the side saw Ning Chuan nodding. His eyes, which had been squinted, suddenly widened at this moment, and he looked extremely excited. He stared at Ning Chuan for a long time, and finally couldn't help but speak. Can you demonstrate that sword technique to me again? Koshiro's very excited voice was heard. Ning Chuan smiled slightly and responded directly. I was planning to practice it again to get familiar with it. Mr. Koshiro, please help me check next and see where I still need to improve. After saying that, Ning Chuan once again picked up the wooden sword in his hand. He was seen calmly, and without Koshiro's leadership, he began to practice the sword technique that Koshiro had just done. However, this time it surprised everyone. Ning Chuan's movements when swinging the sword are almost exactly the same as what Koshiro just demonstrated. His sword was smooth and precise, without any awkwardness at all. It was as if he had already mastered this set of swordsmanship, and every movement seemed so familiar that he had practiced it thousands of times. Koshiro and Kuina stood aside and watched carefully. The expressions of the two people gradually changed from curiosity to unbelievable shock. Especially when you see that Ning Chuan can even do all the subtle details in the swordsmanship very well. Koshiro couldn't help but exclaimed in his heart. Genius! This kid is simply a genius who is rarely seen in swordsmanship for thousands of years. Although my swordsmanship is not that difficult, it is impossible for ordinary people to practice it to such an exaggerated level just by looking at it. But he is lucky. He only practiced this set of swordsmanship once and became as proficient as if he had practiced it thousands of times. This kid's talent is really amazing. After completing the last move, Ning Chuan stood firmly and put the wooden sword back to his waist. He looked at Koshiro with a smile on his face. Mr. Koshiro, how do you think of my swordsmanship? Hearing Ning Chuan's voice, Koshiro finally recovered from the shock. I saw him taking a deep breath, and his expression gradually returned to its former gentleness. But at this moment, his eyes were shining brighter. Ning Chuan, you actually mastered this set of swordsmanship in just one try. You have a talent for swordsmanship beyond ordinary people's imagination. If you are willing to practice hard on the path of swordsmanship, it will take less than 20 years, no, 10 years. You will definitely become a great swordsman in Greater Shanghai. Koshiro was not stingy with his words of praise, and even Ning Chuan was a bit embarrassed to praise him. Kuina on the side heard what her father said. He clenched the wooden sword in his hand and looked at Ning Chuan in shock. She has grown up and spent such a long time in the kendo gym. But it was the first time I heard my father praise someone so much. When the two sisters Nami and Nokigao heard Koshiro praise Ning Chuan so much, their faces were filled with happiness. Especially when I heard Koshiro say that Ning Chuan can become a great swordsman in the future. The stories about swordsmen they had heard since childhood immediately appeared in front of their eyes. The great swordsman is very handsome. I really look forward to what Ning Chuan will look like when he becomes a great swordsman. Regarding Koshiro's evaluation of himself, Ning Chuan didn't take it to heart. In fact, Ning Chuan himself knew it very well without him having to say anything. For me, becoming a great swordsman is only a matter of time. But the 10 years Koshiro mentioned is still too long for him. Mr. Koshiro, I think 10 years is too long to become a great swordsman. 10 years is too long, seize the day. Next, you can start teaching me real swordsmanship for fighting. Ning Chuan just finished speaking. Koshiro didn't have time to speak. Kuina, who had been staring at Ning Chuan, suddenly stood in front of Ning Chuan very angry for some reason. 10 years is too long. What do you think of the great swordsman and the way of the sword? I admit that your talent in swordsmanship is very strong, even far superior to mine, reaching a level that is difficult for me to reach. But swordsmanship is not as simple as you think. Don't think that just because you have mastered a set of swordsmanship, you don't know the world, you brat. He looked at Kuina, who was getting extremely angry at her comments about kendo. Ning Chuan didn't say much, he just smiled at her and said, Miss Kuina, it seems that you know a lot about kendo and great swordsmen. How about you pick up the sword in your hand and teach me what kendo and the great swordsmen are? That's exactly what I meant. If you lose, you can no longer despise the swordsman and the great swordsman. Kuina raised the wooden sword in her hand, pointed at Ning Chuan and said seriously, What if you lose? Let's do this. If you lose, you can follow me to practice swordsmanship. Wherever I go, you can follow me. What do you think? Ning Chuan responded with a smile. After hearing Ning Chuan's words, Koshiro subconsciously turned to look at Ning Chuan. What does this fool mean? Does this guy want to abduct my precious daughter? When he thought of this, he turned around and looked at Nami and Nuo Chigao, who were following Ning Chuan. Then Koshiro seemed to understand something and said nervously, Did these two little girls also get tricked into boarding the ship by this fool? Now this little fool has started to fool my Kuina again. No, we can't let Kuina be fooled by him. However, Koshiro didn't have time to stop Kuina. Unexpectedly, Kuina took the lead and spoke with great seriousness. Okay, I promise you. I have been practicing swordsmanship for such a long time, and I will definitely not lose to a kid like you who is just getting started. After hearing his daughter's words, Koshiro's heart suddenly went cold. However, he quickly adjusted at this time. I thought with a hint of luck. This kid is just starting out, so he shouldn't be a match for Kuina. I guess, right? No, what should be. This boy, don't even think about kidnapping my precious daughter. Unless his swordsmanship can pass mine. When he thought of this, Koshiro couldn't help but clench the wooden sword in his hand and stared at Ning Chuan menacingly. Ning Chuan felt a burst of murderous aura coming from him. He didn't even need to look, he guessed that this murderous aura was coming from Koshiro. After all, it is indeed too much to lie to his daughter in front of his father. Kuina, you don't need to take action, let me do it. Just when Ning Chuan was about to pick up the wooden sword in his hand and discuss the art of swordsmanship with Ning Chuan. Suddenly, a firm voice came from the door of the gym. Ning Chuan and Kuina turned their heads at the same time. As a result, I saw little Zoro standing at the door with 3 knives on his back and a serious look on his face. Seeing that little Zoro wanted to challenge him instead of Kuina, Ning Chuan couldn't help but smile. Zoro, This is my fight, it has nothing to do with you. You are not allowed to take action. However, stubborn Zoro would not listen to Kuina. I saw 3 wooden swords being danced like wildfire by him. Zoro stepped forward, brandishing 3 wooden swords, and charged towards Ningchuan menacingly. 3 sword style. Watching the incoming Zoro, Ningchuan stood quietly on the spot, with a smile on his face and thought to himself. System, calculate the cultivation level of swordsmanship just practiced. Congratulations to host for successfully practicing a set of swordsmanship and activating the 10,000-fold return system. Start practice settlement now. Settlement is successful. Congratulations to host for successfully receiving a refund for practicing 10,000 sets of sword skills. Host's mastery of Koshiro's swordsmanship has been greatly improved. Successfully feel the swordsmanship returned by the system. At this time, Ningchuan's understanding of Kendo has successfully reached a new level. Looking at Zoro who has already reached him, Ningchuan did not mobilize any power except swordsmanship. After all, for Ningchuan, who has mastered the domineering color of armed color and knowledge color, no matter which power he uses, he is always bullying children. In addition, his swordsmanship has been returned to the level of 10,000 times after 2 systematic improvements. He is confident that he can easily crush Zoro with his sword skills. When Zoro's 3 swords were about to touch Ningchuan, Ningchuan casually pointed his sword at Zoro. With a flick of his wrist, the wooden sword in his hand was like a very fast lightning, accurately positioned at the intersection of Zoro's 3 swords. Just listen to a crisp, ding, sound. Zoro's 3 swords were knocked away by Ningchuan's sword and scattered on the ground. Immediately afterwards, Ningchuan's sword edge went down and gently touched Zoro's neck. His movements were so smooth, as if this process had been rehearsed thousands of times in his mind. This guy's swordsmanship has become stronger again. Koshiro looked at Ningchuan's move this time. I couldn't help but be shocked. It can be seen from his cultivation that Ningchuan's swordsmanship has made quite a breakthrough in this very short period of time. Why can't I see his sword clearly? Kuina was also shocked. She watched the whole battle between Ningchuan and Zoro just now and didn't miss it at all. Kuina is naturally very familiar with Zoro's moves. She knew very well that although Zoro's moves were not strong, they were not easy for a newcomer to the sword to break. However, when Ningchuan drew his sword, but she saw the same calmness on Ningchuan's face as when her father taught her how to practice swordsmanship. Kuina knows that it is a kind of crushing in the realm of swordsmanship. And Ningchuan, this guy just started practicing swordsmanship. He was able to successfully crush Zoro in the realm of swordsmanship. How could she not be shocked by this? I lost. Zoro looked at the sword on his neck and lowered his head helplessly. My swordsmanship is good. If you follow your own path, you will definitely be one of the future swordsmen. Hearing Ningchuan's compliment, Zoro's face showed a rare hint of excitement. However, Ningchuan's next words directly made him feel lost again. It shouldn't be a problem for you to become a 3-sword swordsman, but the strongest swordsman must be mine, Ningchuan. Zoro. After a period of silence, Zoro stared at Ningchuan seriously for a while. I will beat you. Even if I really become the strongest swordsman in the sea, I will definitely challenge you in the future. Because my dream is to be the strongest swordsman in the world. After Zoro left a few words, he quickly picked up the wooden sword scattered on the ground. Prepare to go back and work harder to practice. However, when he left, he looked at Kuina and after a moment of silence, he spoke. Kuina, you are no match for him. His current level of swordsmanship is beyond my reach. Watching Zoro's back as he leaves, Kuina couldn't help but tighten the wooden knife in her hand. She aspires to become the strongest female swordsman in the world, but she won't give up before she even draws her sword. Whoa! Kuina was heartbroken and pulled out the wooden sword in her hand. Draw out your sword. Although I know that I should not be your opponent, I must let you know that Kendo is not that simple. Watching his precious daughter point the sword at Ningchuan again, Koshiro deliberately broke up the fight and wanted to calm down his precious daughter. Don't fall into this brat's trap. After all, he knew that with Ningchuan's current swordsmanship strength, he had a lot of experience in swordsmanship. 10 Kuinas are not enough for Ningchuan to fight on his own. Kuina, how about we calm down? Father, Please don't persuade me, I must let this guy know my swordsmanship today. Koshiro, seeing that he could not persuade his daughter. Koshiro turned to look at Ningchuan helplessly. But when he looked at Ningchuan, there was a hint of warning in his eyes. As if to warn Ningchuan. If you dare to go too far, kid, see if I don't punish you severely next. Ningchuan, of course, didn't take Koshiro's warning to heart. He looked at Koshiro with a smile, and then set his eyes on Kuina. As if he was deliberately angry with Koshiro, he spoke seriously to Kuina. Does our previous bet still count? Calculate. How can it not be counted? Are you looking down on me? Looking at the angry Kuina, Ningchuan helplessly spread his hands to Koshiro. He seemed to mean, Lao Dang, look, it's your daughter who insists on coming with me, don't blame me. Looking at Ningchuan's appearance at this time, Koshiro's eyes darkened and he almost lost his temper. It took him a while to recover, and he gritted his teeth in his heart. Okay, didn't you, kid, ask me to teach you some real skills? Look, if I don't let you see what it means to be a swordsman, I won't be Shimotsuki Koshiro. Ningchuan, draw your sword. Kuina holds a wooden sword with a firm look in her eyes. She took a step forward and assumed a fighting stance. Looking at Kuina's posture, Ningchuan smiled slightly, picked up the wooden sword in his hand, and prepared to meet Kuina's challenge. However, before meeting Kuina's challenge, Ningchuan still kept talking in his mind. System, settlement, congratulations host. Since the brief confrontation with Zoro, Ningchuan's understanding of swordsmanship has improved a bit through the system settlement. This allows him to deal with Kuina's next attack more easily. Looking at Ningchuan, he had already tightened his grip on the wooden sword in his hand. Kuina no longer hesitated and took the lead in launching the offensive. Her swordsmanship is fast and accurate, and she strives to find Ningchuan's flaws with every sword strike, thus completely defeating him. This is Kuina's advantage. However, Ningchuan's reaction was much faster than she expected. Every time Kuina used his sword, Ningchuan was able to strike back and easily resolve every attack by Kuina again and again. In his hand, the wooden sword seemed to be alive. Each sword is just right, not hurting the opponent, but also effectively controlling the battle situation. Looking at Ningchuan taking his time, he seemed to be teasing Kuina. Koshiro on the side, eyes full of wonder. Ningchuan's progress was so fast that it almost exceeded his knowledge. He could feel that in a very short period of time, Ningchuan had improved a lot in his swordsmanship. It's difficult. Could it be that this is someone who was born to practice swordsmanship? How come every time I see him take action, I have the illusion that his swordsmanship is stronger than before? Koshiro reviewed all his experiences during the period after he came into contact with Ningchuan. He couldn't help but sigh. This boy Ningchuan's talent and understanding of swordsmanship are truly rare in the world. The progress made in a short period of time has exceeded that of most people in the world. While sighing, Koshiro did not forget to add something in his mind. But, no matter how great your swordsmanship talent is, you can never kidnap my daughter. The confrontation between Kuina and Ningchuan lasted for a long time. In the end, Kuina seemed to realize that Ningchuan had been playing with her. He didn't use his full strength to fight. Kuina felt a little angry, which made her a little confused. Even the posture of swinging the sword has been somewhat deformed. Seeing this scene, Ningchuan shook his head helplessly. Following the movement in his hand, the wooden sword stabbed forward easily. He directly knocked the wooden sword in Kuina's hand, which was in disarray, for more than 10 meters, and was firmly inserted into the wooden board of the gym. He felt the sword in his hand fly out. Kuina looked weakly at her right hand, then turned to look at Ningchuan who was sheathing his sword. She sighed and said helplessly, I lost. Next, I will fulfill my promise. Wherever you go, I will follow you. Until I defeat you completely. Kuina clenched her fists, her voice full of dissatisfaction. Listen to your precious daughter. Koshiro's face instantly darkened, and his right hand unconsciously clenched the wooden sword on his waist. If his daughter hadn't been there, he would have saved some face as a father. Otherwise, he might be so angry that he would draw his sword directly against Ningchuan. Ningchuan naturally noticed Koshiro's ugly expression at this time. However, he, who has always been very thick-skinned, naturally chose to ignore Koshiro's murderous look. He quickly came to Kuina's side, smiled and rubbed her head. Since you are going to follow me from now on, you must also get to know the members of our ship. This is Nami. You two are about the same age. This is Nokigao. You have to call her sister. Our ship is parked at the port. There are many rooms on it. You can choose any one. They all have independent bathrooms. There are a lot of delicious food on the ship, and Nuochigao is also a good cook. You can tell her whatever you want to eat. There is also the issue of remuneration. Everyone has a monthly salary of 100,000 belly. If you want to buy something when the ship docks, feel free to buy it. It doesn't matter if you spend more than you spend. Just tell Nami and let her reimburse you. Quote. Anyway, don't worry, we will definitely not treat you badly on our ship. Hearing Ning Chuan's enthusiastic words, Kuina couldn't help but become curious about her future life on the ship. Nami and Nuochigao also actively cooperated and came to Kuina's side at this moment. He told her about their previous adventure with Ning Chuan on the sea. This successfully aroused Kuina's curiosity about the world outside Shimotsuki village. This kid is so disgusting. You haven't even boarded the ship yet, and you've already started brainwashing my baby Kuina. No, we can't let Kuina be fooled by this kid. At this time Koshiro looked at Ningchuan. It feels like a middle-aged father trying to prevent his precious daughter from being abducted by a little yellow-haired man with a will-o'-the-wisp. Cough, cough, I'm talking about you little brats. Who said Kuina is going to get on the ship? As a father, I haven't agreed yet. Koshiro suddenly stood up when they were chatting with each other and spoke seriously to them. Father, didn't you always teach me that we Shimotsuki family should do what we say? I have already lost the competition with Ning Chuan, so I have to be willing to admit defeat. Listen to Kuina refute her words. Koshiro felt a little dizzy. But he couldn't refute Kuina's words. After all, what she said was right. People in the Shimotsuki family have never broken their promises. This is a family rule. That's not what I meant. I meant to say, by the way, I want to say that you can go to sea with Ning Chuan, but I don't trust the strength of you guys right now. The sea is very dangerous. Unless you have the strength to brave the sea, I will no longer stop you from going to sea. Koshiro's head was spinning at this moment. In the end, he successfully came up with what he thought was a good reason to prevent Kuina from going to sea with Ningchuan and the others. Although this reason may only work for a period of time, when they become stronger, they will still go to sea. But at the very least, Kuina won't be fooled into running away by Ningchuan. However, at this moment, Ning Chuan's voice suddenly rang in his ears. Mr. Koshiro, when you say you have the ability to go overseas, do you have a standard? Hearing Ningchuan's question, Koshiro's lips showed a hint of a wicked smile that seemed to have succeeded. It seemed that he had already guessed that Ning Chuan would ask this question. Of course, that is, become a swordsman and defeat me. As long as the combined strength of the four of you can defeat me, then I will no longer stop you. The sea, let's go out and explore with you. Kuina frowned when she heard her father Koshiro's words, and a trace of dissatisfaction flashed in her eyes. She knew that her father said this because he wanted to buy time. After practicing swordsmanship with her father for so long, she knows very well how accomplished her father Koshiro is in swordsmanship. Although my father's name has not been spread in the sea. But Kuina knew that her father's training in swordsmanship was at least a swordsman level. To defeat him, even a genius like Ning Chuan will take at least a few years. Father, this is not fair. You have practiced for so long longer than us. I am afraid that within a few years, we will not be your opponents. Besides, Ningchuan and the others are from Koko Nishi village. They can sail on the sea for so long, why can't I? Are the daughters of the Shimotsuki family worse than others? Hear the words of his own daughter Kuina. Koshiro was so angry that his teeth itched. Good guy, you haven't even gone out to sea yet, and you're already talking to this brat Ning Chuan. Oh, my daughter's elbows started to turn outwards when she got older. I don't know what's good about this brat. Isn't it just that he's a little more handsome? If I had known, I wouldn't have asked you to agree to that broken bet with him just now. Koshiro regretted not stopping Kuina who had made the bet just now. However, that's why. That's why he is so shameless and unwilling to let go on the issue of going to sea. Looking at Kuina arguing with his father, Ning Chuan couldn't help but smile. He reached out his hand at the right time, gently pressed Kuina's shoulder, and spoke to comfort her. Kuina, Mr. Koshiro is right. There are many dangers on the sea. We must have a certain strength to survive. After listening to what Ning Chuan said, Koshiro nodded slightly, his dissatisfaction with Ning Chuan weakening slightly. Although this kid is a bit annoying, he still behaves quite well when it comes to big issues of right and wrong. Now that he has begun to relent, I will teach him swordsmanship for a few more years, so that when they go to sea in the future, I don't have to worry too much about their safety. Just as Koshiro was thinking about the next arrangements, Ning Chuan's voice rang out again. But, as soon as the word, but, came out of his mouth, Koshiro immediately became wary. What does this kid want to say? Why is this turn so scary? Just when Koshiro couldn't guess what Ning Chuan was going to say next, Ning Chuan's words directly made him very angry. However, although there are dangers on the sea, I will ensure your safety with my presence. For me, your father's test is not difficult. Watching Ning Chuan patting his chest and promising Kuina, he looked like shit. Koshiro had the urge to draw his sword and kill Ning Chuan right away. This fool boy has laid the groundwork so much just to say this. Okay. Since you are so confident, I will dampen your spirit. Whoa. Koshiro no longer hesitated and directly took out the wooden sword from his arms and pointed it at Ning Chuan. Brat, I really can't stand you anymore. Come on, let me show you now how far you still have to go to sea. Look at Koshiro finally willing to draw his sword. Only then did a smile appear on the corner of Ning Chuan's mouth. By forcing Koshiro into a panic and forcing him to draw his sword, Ning Chuan's goal has been achieved. After all, if you want to learn real swordsmanship faster, you can't just follow Koshiro's rhythm. Then please give me some advice, Mr. Koshiro. After saying that, Ning Chuan patted Kuina's shoulder gently. He motioned for her, Nami, and Nokigao to step aside first. Then Ning Chuan also skillfully pulled out the wooden sword from his waist, ready to deal with Koshiro's moves at any time. Snort, you brat, don't blame me for bullying you. Although your talent is good, you are really a little crazy. I have to dampen your energy. Just use one blow to defeat you. In order to teach Ning Chuan a lesson. Koshiro is about to use the strongest move he has mastered in swordsmanship over the years. The intention was to use this blow to completely defeat Ning Chuan, so that his impetuous heart could calm down and he could practice swordsmanship with himself for a few years. Koshiro looked at him seriously. Ning Chuan stood quietly opposite Koshiro. His expression was extremely calm, and he did not show any nervousness because he had to face Koshiro, a swordsman. However, this time he did not exaggerate, but concentrated on it. He even activated his domineering power to the maximum extent. He wanted to observe the process of Koshiro drawing his sword from all angles. Make your subsequent understanding and practice of his swordsmanship easier. Ning Chuan, be careful. Koshiro took a deep breath. The next moment, the wooden sword in his hand seemed to be integrated with his will, making his whole body enveloped in a special sword intention. He did not use his own domineering power, but prepared to rely solely on his sword skills to convince Ning Chuan. Just when his sword intent was almost concentrated, Koshiro finally moved. His figure flashed, and the wooden sword in his hand instantly turned into countless sword shadows, pointing straight at Ning Chuan. This sword of his contains the essence of Koshiro's decades of kendo training. Whether it is speed, strength or skill, they have all reached an incredible level. Secretly turning on Ning Chuan, who had seen and heard of domineering cheating. Faced with this sudden blow, there was no panic at all. Koshiro's sword was so fast that it even passed his eyes. But under Ning Chuan's top-notch domineering power, he can still clearly see all the trajectory of Koshiro's sword. Koshiro is worthy of being a swordsman-level warrior. You don't need domineering, you can use such powerful sword moves just with swordsmanship. If I don't become so domineering, I really can't stop you. Ning Chuan couldn't help but admire in his heart. However, after admiring, looking at the wooden sword that was already coming in front of him, Ning Chuan finally moved. He stared at the trajectory of the wooden sword and judged the landing point several times. Ning Chuan stabbed dozens of swords in one direction. Bite, bite, bite. There was a crisp sword sound. The two wooden swords kept colliding with each other in the air. Every time Koshiro used his sword, he was successfully stopped by Ning Chuan. This kid, how is that possible? Koshiro's shock grew stronger as he watched his sword moves being resolved by Ning Chuan one by one. He knew very well that if he wanted to defeat the young man in front of him who didn't know how to use domineering energy, swordsmanship alone might not be enough to achieve his goal. He turned to look at Kuina, who was watching the battle nervously. An idea quietly rose in his mind. No, we must defeat this kid. Even if I bully him with armed color and domineering, I still have to let him defeat once. Thinking of this, Koshiro no longer hesitated and directly wrapped his armed haki around the wooden sword. Prepare to give Ning Chuan the final blow. However, Ning Chuan, who was driving the top-level domineering car, naturally noticed Koshiro's intention immediately. He didn't hesitate at all, and his whole body's momentum rose accordingly. A burst of armed haki that rivaled Koshiro's haki instantly emerged from his body and quickly wrapped around the wooden sword in his hand. Boom! Two powerful armed domineering energy passed through the wooden sword and collided fiercely in midair. The confrontation between wooden swords and wooden swords, at this moment, is no longer just a contest of skills, but a direct confrontation of armed color and domineering. With this final blow, the two collided. The domineering fluctuations that escaped directly destroyed most of the entire gym. This was still the result of the two people's restraint. Otherwise, if both of them used their strongest weapons and domineering force to fight against each other, I'm afraid this gym has completely become a ruin. The disciples watching the battle might also be buried under the ruins. After the two men fought, Koshiro lowered his head and watched himself retreat a dozen meters. He looked up again and looked at Ning Chuan, who was standing motionless. He was silent for a moment and then spoke in a tone of extreme shock. You kid, you actually know how to use domineering weapons and colors? After asking this question, Koshiro immediately regretted it. It's bad. Not only did I fail to take down this kid with my swordsmanship, but I also failed to attack with my armed color. Now I'm really embarrassed. Just when Koshiro was worried that Ning Chuan would tell his little tricks and embarrass himself in front of Kuina, Ning Chuan didn't care about this, but said with a serious smile. Sorry, Mr. Koshiro, I was able to take over your swordsmanship just now, but I actually cheated. Hearing Ning Chuan say that he cheated, Koshiro's old face turned red. As for cheating, he just cheated with armed color haki. But even if he was cheating, he never beat Ning Chuan when it came to fighting for the domineering power of his weapons. So he was very embarrassed when it came to cheating. Ning Chuan naturally saw the embarrassment on Koshiro's face. But he didn't point it out, but continued to speak. During the battle just now, I secretly used the haki of insight to predict the landing point of your sword. Otherwise, I would have been defeated long ago. Hearing Ning Chuan be so humble, it's not easy for Koshiro to care about this matter. However, he is very curious about Ning Chuan now. Especially when Ning Chuan revealed that he had stolen the power of seeing and hearing. At such a young age, not only is the armament color haki inferior to mine, but the intensity of the knowledge color haki is also not inferior to mine. This kid actually has something hidden, it's really unexpected. At this time, when Koshiro looked at Ning Chuan again, his eyes were full of doubts. He couldn't even think of it. Who in the entire sea has the ability to train Ning Chuan to be so tyrannical at a young age? I didn't expect you, kid, to hide such strength. Today was an eye-opener for me. However, since you already have such strength, why do you still come to my kendo gym? Koshiro put away the wooden knife and stared straight at Ning Chuan with a slightly unkind tone. Ning Chuan smiled slightly and was not annoyed by Koshiro's tone. Mr. Koshiro, it's true that I hid my strength. But didn't you ask me to? Besides, I'm here to learn swordsmanship and sword making. This doesn't seem to have much to do with my other abilities, right? Listening to Ning Chuan's sophistry, Koshiro felt helpless for a moment. Ning Chuan's fallacy is right. After all, from a common sense point of view, a child as old as Ning Chuan would not be able to handle it. Who would have thought that he would be a master of dual domination? Koshiro was choked by Ning Chuan and was speechless for a while. Koshiro looked like he was speechless and wanted to hit someone. Ning Chuan continued to stimulate. Mr. Koshiro, I don't know if I am qualified to take Kuina to sea with my strength just now. I heard that Ning Chuan was not opening any pot at this time. Koshiro's face couldn't help but turn darker. He held it in for a long time and continued to argue. Enough strength is enough, but my Kuina is learning swordsmanship. You don't have grandmaster swordsmanship, so why would she go out with you? It sounds like my father is actually starting to cheat. Kuina was so angry that she pouted and complained to Koshiro. Dad, why don't you keep your words? Looking at his angry daughter, Koshiro couldn't bear it. But for the sake of his daughter's future, he gritted his teeth and ignored Kuina's words. Looking at this scene, Ning Chuan raised the corners of his mouth again. Since Mr. Koshiro thinks that my swordsmanship is not good enough to teach Kuina, then can you give me some time to practice my sword skills? If my swordsmanship can meet your requirements, then please respect Kuina's ideas. What do you think? Looking at the extremely confident look on Ning Chuan's face, Koshiro thought for a moment, as if he remembered something, and suddenly said with a smirk. A while, how about I give you a day? As for the swordsmanship I just used, as long as you can master all the essence of it and use it perfectly, I will agree to let Kuina go to sea with you. Otherwise, there is no need to discuss it. Do you dare to bet? Koshiro dared to say such words because he was confident in the swordsmanship he had just used. The swordsmanship he just used contained his lifelong understanding of swordsmanship. If Ning Chuan can use it perfectly, then his swordsmanship will be able to become a swordsman. As for whether he can go one step further and become a great swordsman in the future, then the pure competition is the use of domineering and the understanding of kendo. The latter two things cannot be taught and can only be mastered by oneself. But swordsmanship is different, it does not require domineering support. It depends on one's personal understanding and use of the sword. As long as Ning Chuan can master the swordsmanship he just used, it means that he has successfully taught Ning Chuan the essence of what he has learned throughout his life. In that case, even if he takes Kuina out to sea, he can still give guidance on Kuina's sword practice. Her talent in swordsmanship would not be wasted. This is the reason why Koshiro proposed this condition. One day, I think it's a bit long, it shouldn't take that long. For Ning Chuan, one day is indeed a long time. HMPH. You'll know after a while of practicing. I won't remind you of anything during this day, it's all up to you. After saying that, Koshiro turned around. He forcibly faced Kuina's complaining eyes and ran out of the gym quickly. Baby girl, don't blame Dad for being cruel. I do this for your own good. Ning Chuan, isn't one day too short? How about I go and beg Dad again? Or call my grandpa out of the knife forging room and deal with my disgusting father who likes to break his promises. After hearing Kuina's words, Ning Chuan shook his head. Kuina, one day is enough for me. Maybe it won't take that long at all. Ning Chuan reached out and rubbed Kuina's head, looking at the cute girl with a face as ripe as a red apple, and said with a smile. Let's do this. Let Nami and Nokigao take you around the ship first. I'll be alone with my thoughts for a while. After Nami and left with Kuina, Ning Chuan couldn't help but reveal a smirk. Koshiro, you can make things difficult for others, but if you make things difficult for me, you still underestimate me too much. I'm afraid you don't know that there is another realm above genius, and that is the state of being a master. Kuina, I will definitely take her away. I finally came to the world of pirates, but I don't want to see this little girl with good talent and good character fall to her death from the stairs like the original. System, let's start calculating the sword skills I just observed. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.